Hey. If you guys want to get ready, we're going to get started in about 5 minutes. We're going to get started in about 5 minutes.
We can talk about it.
To be managed where you guys are in, so just stand by 1 second. We'll get started. I want to thank everybody for attending the meeting today. We've had some very successful meetings in the past with bringing our diverse group from across Pennsylvania together to continue the process of taking a look at the SR6 recommendations, seeing what needs to be changed, updated, moved past, where we need to go. Obviously, the goal for today is the overall goal for today is to kind of challenge where we need to go and what are the next couple steps that you see from your organization, your association. You know, what do we need to accomplish before the end of the year, before the end of this legislative session? And or then how do we and when do we start to plan, which we'll start to plan for the next session and where we need to go. So what we will do is we'll start around the room with introductions, and how we did this before is we'll do the introductions in the room first, and then I will do a roll call of people that are on the Zoom meeting. And I'm assuming that everyone can hear me on the Zoom meeting. I want to thank Caitlin for managing the Zoom meeting in the background. But I also like to thank the Pennsylvania Association of Township Supervisors for permitting us to use their facility and the technology that's associated with this meeting. So with that, I'd like to introduce myself to those of you who do not know me. My name is Jerry Ozog. I'm the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Fire and Emergency Services Institute. The Institute is a organization that works to advocate and educate members of the General Assembly, their staff, different associations in Harrisburg, municipal leaders, and all different organizations with the goal of sustaining and improving emergency services in Pennsylvania. So I'd like to move to my left, and we'll start with the left of the room. You all notice there is mics that are in the room. We were able to successfully do this meeting, and everyone was able to hear. If you cannot hear when someone talks, please indicate by raising your hand, and I'll let you know. We'll kind of repeat that. So we'll start to my left, and I'd like you just your name, since there is some new people that are involved in our process. Your name, where are you from, and what agency that you represent. So with that, thank you very much.
Okay, Tom Cook. I'm the administrator at the State Fire Academy.
Yes, you can do that, Stephanie.
I'm Tiffany Panasetti. I'm here kind of in a shadow capacity with Jerry today. He was generous enough to ask me to hang out. But I'm actually with Ickersburg Fire Company out in Perry County. Just here to hear what you guys are all about.
Thank you very much.
My name is Jared Renshaw. I'm the fire commissioner of the Western Berks Fire Department, and I also sit on the board for the PFDSI. Dustin Ulrich, Fire and EMS Chief of the Chambersburg Fire Department and President of the Pennsylvania Career Fire Chiefs.
Scott Little, Fire Chief, Manheim Township Fire Rescue, Lancaster County, Second Vice President, Pennsylvania Career Fire Chiefs.
Dave Jones, President of the Pennsylvania Emergency Health Services Council.
Chaz McGarvey, State Fire Commissioner.
Heather Scher, Ambulance Association of Pennsylvania and the Pennsylvania EMS Provider Foundation. Can I do like a shameless plug? Monday, September 12th, we have our statewide EMS memorial service, and everybody is invited to attend if they would like to. It's at the Capitol at the East Wing Rotunda.
And that's at 11 o'clock in the morning.
11 o'clock, yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Aaron Roan, Pennsylvania Department of Health Bureau of EMS Director. John Doremus, Ambulance Association of Pennsylvania and Suburban EMS of Eastern PA.
Good afternoon, everybody. Bob Stakem, Executive Director of Public Safety Education and Training at HAC.
Chad Deodore, retired fire chief, York City Fire Department, and the vice president of PFESI.
I'm Steve Bear. I'm the fire chief in State College. Currently serve as the president of the PFESI Executive Board, and I also represent PA in these meetings.
I'm Joe Curtis, the Director of Government Relations here at PSATS.
George Bivens, I'm with PSATS, also in government relations.
Kevin Boozle, Butler County Commissioner and Chairman of the County Commissioners Association.
Melissa Gates, Government Relations Manager for the County Commissioners Association and staff liaison to our Emergency Management and Veterans Affairs Committee.
Tom Stark, with the County Commissioners Association. I oversee our human services affiliate and co-liaison on our emergency management.
Tracy Young, Room Guard, Ossc State Fire Commissioner, Administrator for Recruitment and Retention.
Sean Harris, acting executive director of the Pennsylvania House Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee.
Nate Silcox, with the Senate Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee.
Okay, I'd like you to bring up the Zoom attendees up on the screen, and I'll have each one of them introduce themselves, but I will call out your name and do that. Okay, right. Hold on one sec. Oh, here we go. All right, we will go. Jim, you want to introduce yourself first? Jim Carstead.
Jim Carstater, Firefighters Association, State of Pennsylvania Law and Legislative Committee.
Thank you, Jim. Bo.
Bo Crowding from Chester County Emergency Services.
Thank you. Jerry Brands.
Good afternoon. I'm the Assistant Fire Chief with Patton Fire Company in Cambria County, a member of the Board of Directors of the Pennsylvania Fire and Emergency Services Institute, and a monthly contributor to FireRescue1.com.
Thank you. Bill Genoway.
Hi, Bill Genoway, Township Supervisor and Assistant Chief of Fire and EMS of Upper Marion Township, Montgomery County. I also serve on the Executive Board, Montgomery County Association of Township Officials, and I'm the President of the Congressional Fire Services Institute Board of Directors.
Thank you, Bill. AJ. You're unmuted, AJ. I just don't hear you. Okay, I'll come back. I know that's AJ. He's the chairman, president of Pennsylvania Association of Township Supervisors, Executive Committee. Frank.
State Representative Frank Vary from Bucks County. I chair the Fire and Emergency Services Caucus in the House. I also serve as fire chief at Langhorne Middletown Fire Company.
Thank you, Frank. And then Frank Zingari. You got to unmute, Frank.
Frank Sangari, SWAP chairman and a member of the PFESI.
Okay, we'll make sure we turn up the bandwidth in Schuylkill County so we can hear you. All right, very good. Everybody, thank you very much for being able to attend today. I did send out a lot of material ahead of time for the meeting. I did not do those I didn't print a whole bunch of things up, but we did send a survey out, and I've asked you guys to review the survey, and we will review a little bit of that survey as we move on today. I'm just going to do some very brief briefings with the survey and some of the things that we heard from the survey, especially as we move forward in some of those big ideas and moving forward. We'll then move into the EMS discussion. And the first part of the meeting will be focused on EMS directly. And the second part of the meeting will focus on fire. We'll see how we're going. We'll have a break in between there, depending on our discussions. But other than that, I don't have a ton of slides, and you're not going to be PowerPointed to death, because the goal of these meetings are to be positively working forward. So what I wanted to do with the survey and talk to you about the survey is, one of the first questions were, are you familiar, okay, with the legislative accomplishments? And the people that responded to the survey were very familiar with what has been accomplished so far. And that's one of our concerns when we're out in the field and meeting with people. I have heard repeatedly from local areas that, well, what's going on? How are we, what's happening? And many of you have heard that same thing. And my concern again is are we continuing to reach the field personnel in the field, the volunteer firefighters, the career firefighters, the EMTs and paramedics, the leaders in municipalities? Are we doing that? Is our communications methods working? Okay, is our communication method working? Again, we could go through this a little bit later as we move on. There was, again, a question about, what are the big ideas in moving forward? What are the big ideas in moving forward? Again, a lot of things are not too surprising, but we'll absolutely see some of those things in the future. The other thing, again, is additional ideas. Again, the one thing that popped out that was very interesting on some of the additional ideas was the focus on some sort of rural caucus. Okay. And again, many of you have been to meetings with me in very rural areas of Pennsylvania, and the needs of rural Pennsylvania may be a little bit different, maybe a lot different than suburban or urban areas of Pennsylvania. So that was definitely some positive things that I have heard with that. So getting right into the discussion, I want to start with the EMS end, and I'm not sure if it would be Dave, Jeanette, Heather, or Dawn to kind of start, or Aaron to kind of start some of your thoughts on where do you feel we need to go. How we'll do this is kind of like it'll be an open statement, discussions and things. If you have a question or with something to add, just raise your hand or let me know, and we'll just kind of facilitate the discussion as we have before. We did have another person come in the room. I don't want to forget. If you want to please introduce yourself right there.
Yeah, Jeff Kavanaugh. I am the Senate Democratic Executive Director of the Veterans Affairs.
Thank you, Jeff. Go, Jeff.
And AJ is on. He has no video, but he can hear us and he can talk. So we should have that resolved.
Okay, got it. AJ, just able to do a quick introduction, please?
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks again. No, you covered it for me. I appreciate that. Guys, I'm the fire chief from Perry Township, Fayette County, Pennsylvania, also township supervisor and the president of the state association here. Welcome to Enola and welcome to the PSAT's headquarters. Thanks for having it there today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, AJ. All right. Dave, Michelle, or Dave, Heather, and Jeanette, or Aaron, or maybe go ahead.
So, good afternoon, everyone. From the EMS perspective, from SR6 moving forward to today, we've seen some progressive changes with the Medicare reimbursement. However, one of the things I'll throw out here is the 20-mile rule really needs rescinded. It does impact a lot of our rural agencies. It impacts a lot of agencies across the Commonwealth. While the increase is helpful, that first 20 miles being free is definitely a burdensome issue. The legislation that recently passed to change the minimum staffing for BLS agencies, it's a helpful process to allow us the ability from the department's perspective with our partners at PHSC and also the Ambulance Association to look at some data across the course of time to ensure that minimum staffing changes aren't creating effective burnout, having an issue where the same provider in some of these rural agencies are the one in the back providing all the care, but it allows us to have an open discussion and be able to get some data. And so while the sunset provision might not be palatable to a lot of agencies, it at least gives us a working process that allows us to continue to work with our partners in both the House and Senate to see what the future holds for EMS. Outside of that, those are the things I've seen that we've progressed in recently. Obviously, we're awaiting companion legislation for the fireworks tax, which will help some of the educational process from the EMS perspective. But at this point, I'll refer to Jeanette and Dave from PHSC for their thoughts, then to Heather.
Thanks, Aaron. We did get some findings on the MSOP fund with the audit that was done in the court system. One of the things we need to be looking at, though, is future funding for that fund. It even appears with the increases we got recently, the fund is not going to be adequately funded in the near future or long term. So I think we need to look at some other other ways to get some funding into there, other funding sources. One of the things that we discussed here was some of the fines coming down on the turnpike. The red light cameras, those are not being allocated to MSOP police as far as I understand it. But we may need to look at some other funding sources to keep that fund solvent, opioid funding or other things. And I think we're gonna talk about the fireworks money. I mean, that's something that's still coming up. We haven't seen much from that yet. Right now, so Heather, you want to talk about your points?
I'm gonna defer to Don.
Why?
We have a long list of feedback on the recommendations.
Yes. So we just hit some general ideas. Unfortunately, with our current status in our industry right now, I mean, the commission report was great. It was done in 2019, but our issues are so rapidly changing that we can't sit on a commission report or a white paper. We have to have action and it has to be timely. So primarily we're concentrating on workforce funding. What was the other one? Oh, reimbursement.
Yeah.
Reimbursement.
And
issues.
updating the outdated medical assistance policies, because they're still from the 80s.
Right, we're still getting audited. and
Right.
Those affect the audits. Just some stuff off the recommendations. All the incentives that go towards tuition reimbursement, post-secondary education, they're all directed at volunteers. I don't think our staff would be concerned with the tax breaks that the fire guys are getting and volunteer EMS are getting, but the tuition assistance, that should be universal. There should be no delineation between volunteer and career now. We have such a workforce shortage that we need help on all angles. We've had discussions at the Ambulance Association about even proposing a statewide fee schedule. With the starting point of workers' compensation has a fee schedule that's pretty close to Medicare, would be a good starting point for a discussion with the insurance lobby and payers, other than state payers. We definitely have to work towards some kind of universal funding mechanism. I know it's been kicked around in the House and Senate with the state police and it's gone nowhere. But there has to be some sort of universal funding mechanism, and it has to be mirrored off the success that happened in Pike County, where you had a willing county government and willing municipal governments, and they turned their entire system around on $4 million. And make great strides with a simple grant program. No legislation, it was just a commissioner and his, the board of commissioners and the municipality just making an agreement. I don't know where we're going with the authorities legislation. Right now, that's an opt-in, so even if that's passed, it's still an opt-in. And talking with my county executive, it's a home rule charter county, he has no interest in it at all. So that kind of defeats the purpose. That's all the extra stuff I really wanted to cover right now.
So I just want to go back for just one additional thing that Dave mentioned, and which did come back in the feedback on one of the surveys, was the concept of the auditing of the courts for MSOP and things like that. There was someone in our group that didn't know that that occurred. And I just want to confirm from you guys, and I know that the LBFC study was done, and if I'm speaking correctly, please correct me, there was nothing wrong, or explain that, please.
There were a couple minor issues, and it mostly dealt with, I don't know, it's 2 counties that they were assessing fees inappropriately. But it was very, very minor. They said for the most part across the board, everything was being done as required to do by law. One thing they did mention, though, was in a lot of cases, and the justices have the freedom to do this, they would either forgive the fine, or they would have the person serve community service, which doesn't help us. But that's something that they are allowed to do.
Can I add one more item?
Yes.
And this is something that we've been kicking around with PEHSC is the fact that EMS is an essential service. We're designated as an essential service. Act 789 of 2007 and the EMS Act also said that we were an essential service, so we should be treated like an essential service. And what exactly that looks like, we need to flesh out. But I think that's important.
And we have both committed to adding that, pursuing that essential service definition and defining what that is. Other states have done that very well. There are national documents on this. So that is something that we'll be able to bring back to the group.
And does that need to be written in any legislation in Pennsylvania, or what does that?
Well, it is in legislation. I think it's an understanding of what that means and explaining that further.
It's part of the current act. That's the
It
first,
is in there.
the first section is EMS is essential first.
Right.
And it names about 8 or 9 points after that.
Right.
A lot.
So we have some legwork on that, but we think that that fundamentally needs to be corrected or understood correctly to move forward with a lot of things.
Got it. And again, just for everyone's knowledge on that, Dave and Jeanette talked about the EMS operating fund, and that fund has generated money for that by when police officers stop vehicles and DUIs, and that's a fund that is used to fund the regional EMS system. It's used to fund training. It's used to fund a variety of things, the system wise. Okay, it's system wise, correct?
Yes.
And what you're saying is you feel that methodology is not sustainable. It is not, it's not going up, and there's costs going up. So that is a concern that you have for our group, is that fund is completely different than some of the things that Dawn talked about, correct?
Right. So if there are more things in Title 75 that can be attached back to the EMS operating fund, fines, are there other places that we can pull money into the fund and look at a different source there? They found that collection was pretty good. It wasn't terrible. Like Dave said, a couple counties were a little off the mark on collection, but there were waivers and other things that impacted as well. And that again is education that can be corrected. But ultimately, they're only going to write so many citations. That's just how it is. And we're overspending that now. So, and we're operating like years ago,
1970s money.
It's really, well, yeah, 1985's money, 84's money. That's pretty much where we're at.
Got it. I'm going to open up to the group. Aaron, you have any comments on feedback on that? And then Dawn, and then I'm going to open up to Sean and Nate.
So one of the things I've been looking at in my role for funding options is what other states do to help create this funding. And our partners in the Commonwealth of Virginia do it associated with the registration of vehicles. So every time you renew your registration in Virginia, a part of that is going back to the EMS system in Virginia. They've been very successful with what they're capable of doing, how they've grown some of their educational programs. And I'm looking to beg, borrow, and steal some of their ideas as we continue to move forward. But obviously, in my role, I'm limited on what we can do without the assistance of our partners under the dome.
And again, the more research that you have, the better. With that, Dawn, you had a question, then I'll go over to you.
No, I just took 2 other points. In 2005, the funding was taken away from the community colleges for fire and EMS training. So basically, 2005 prior, you went free or reduced costs for training for a provider or a fire person for county fire school. After 2005, like our local community college right now, their program is up to $1,100 for an EMT, and that's outrageous. So if we can get that funding back, or if we can even subsidize PLS institutes, licensed PLS institutes by the state through education funding. And something that slipped through the cracks since Chairman Farrar retired was PTSD, PTSI. I know Senator Muth, Police Senator Muth has a bill in for PTSI, but that's been stalled as a workers' compensation benefit for first responders.
Got it. I don't want to lose that. You're correct. Let's go to the education piece, and then Chaz. I want to just hold on a second with that. We talked about Nate. Sean, do you have anything on that discussion on that, those funding.
Going forward, obviously, we're gonna be talking about a lot of issues here, dealing with fire and EMS, what happens on, what needs to be done, there's a lot that has to be done. Nate and I were just talking earlier, there's things we need to do as far as, fall to, implement enabling legislation for the fireworks distribution for that funding. That's something that has to be done and rolled out. I will say this, as far as we're concerned on my side, I have a lot of members coming in next session. 44 vacancies in the House. I don't know who my members on the committee are going to be. I don't know who my chair is going to be. So I'm going to have an education factor on my side come next session when we begin. So I'm going to have to inform all these new members that are coming in of issues. So it's going to be like hitting the low level with these members. So I encourage everybody here, come next session, or actually in December, when we do know who the members are, at least you're gonna have to start knocking on their doors and talking to them. But that's a lot of members, 44 members, and then there's members who may not be coming back that don't know it. So this coming session is gonna be a challenge, I can tell you that right now. And those are things you need to consider. But I will continue to work that Rick O'Leary and I have been doing over the years to try to make sure that we address these issues that have been addressed in this report and any new issues that come about. I'm sure Nate will continue to work with us as well. Their side's going to change a little bit too. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I'm going to keep working the bloody way.
Sean, is there like an orientation day for the, is there like an orientation day?
There's an orientation for members, but that is more about their procedures, what they need to know. However, we have been in discussions with our leadership staff about having to sit down with the chairman to talk about issues that are pertinent to their committees, as well as how the committees operate. So that is still in discussion, but I will use that time, at least educate the next chairman. I'm really hoping it's a chairman that's been on it, a member who's been on the committee who's going to be my chairman. That would be very helpful. He's been around a while, but I don't know.
Thank you, Sean. Nate?
Jerry, thanks for bringing us together here again. I think it was great what we did in terms of the EMS having the rally or press conference back in the May-June time period. It set the table for what got done at that point. And three big things got done. We talked about short-term, medium-term, long-term, and look, the EMS compact got done, the waivers got done, and Representative Causer, got the reimbursement done, and then on top of that, Representative Ferry, who's on the line here, was able to get the fireworks legislation done. That was, they were all adding up. That's huge. What was done, as Sean's talking about, getting the enabling legislation done. Whether there's a, and now we're looking at the fall, and we've got a short runway, and we're going to find out how short it is here very soon. So. Today's helpful in terms of setting the table for this fall. If there's something, manageable that we can get done, fantastic. If it's huge, look, let's hear about it. And maybe we said, maybe we get it done like, we were able to. Not every member is able to get all the things done by themselves, but you heard Representative Cowser, Representative Ferry, Senator Stefano, Senator Baker's been involved here on a number of fronts. Senator Muth is, so there's a lot of things that are, and in the House side with Representative Bobak here, a team approach. So members quarterbacked a couple different items out across the board here, so that was huge on the EMS side, even on the fire side too. So what I'm saying, there's a small runway. It's helpful to know what these priorities are so that we can focus, and if we're able to get 1, 2, 3 again here for the fall, God bless. But we'll take a look at each of these things. I know the countywide authority legislation is still a possibility to move. We'll continue to speak with IBOSS will continue to look at that as a possibility here for the fall, and we'll see where that goes. Whether the any of the other pieces here that we're talking about are possibilities, we'll take a look at it.
Okay, I guess
Very short runway this fall. And just so you know, and I'm glad one of my bosses is on this discussion here. I have a voting meeting scheduled for the 14th of September to move the enabling legislation for the distribution funding. So keep your eyes out for that. and make sure you bend the ears of the members.
He wants to talk, so he just sent me a message. So, and I'll get to Chaz as soon as Rep. Ferry is done. Could you for Zoom, could you bring the faces up a little bit on the screen, please? Forgot your name, I'm sorry. What's her name, Joe?
Sorry, sorry.
Marissa, could you just bring them up and Rep. Ferry, if you want to talk, you could.
Sure,
talk
yeah,
right
just to follow up, and I'm doing two things at once, so I apologize. You don't have my full attention because we have some campaign stuff going on too. But just to kind of follow up what Sean and Nate were talking about, you know, we have 3 legislative weeks before Election Day. And, you know, it takes, you know, roughly 7 days if everything's moving efficiently in both chambers to get something done. So we do need, for like the fireworks legislation and whatnot, we do need some of that to fall into place pretty well. And I'm hopeful that we can try and do that. In terms of next year, I'm running for the state Senate. So I'll either be a state senator or I'll just be back here in Bucks County. But hopefully the campaign will be successful and, you know, I can join the Senate and continue to champion a lot of these issues. The one of the things we did several years ago pre-pandemic was we had a cocktail reception with all the stakeholders, and we invited the members to the cocktail reception. We got sponsors to cover it. It's not hard to get elected officials to go get some free appetizers and beverages. We actually had it at the firehouse, and the stakeholders all had one-pagers on what their top issues were. We tried to get one off the ground this year, and just for a variety of scheduling reasons, we just couldn't get it done. We're not really going to be able to get it done in the fall, and I wouldn't actually recommend it just because there's going to be such a turnover in who is in the 2 chambers. It's something I talked to Jerry about, and I know Nate and the Senate are interested in partnering with the House on this, is doing it early next year. So doing it one of the first legislative weeks will encourage all of the new members as well as those that are seasoned to attend it. And then we would obviously reach out to all the stakeholders to talk about your legislative priorities, have the one-pagers and email it to the membership. That is something that I think can get us off the ground in a good way. Sean is correct that there's a lot that goes on when you're a new member and everything's coming so rapidly at you. And the orientations we have are how your office works, how you get reimbursed for things. You know, they don't even give you a full once over on how even how the legislative process works, much less getting into issues. So I think we all need to collectively push for those issues to be on the forefront. I'm sure a lot of people are running on a public safety platform, and what we still need to clean up from SR6 and any new items. You know, we have a few months to develop that and leave it on the laps of the new members when they come in. And hopefully we can hit the ground running. For anybody that's paid attention to the way the legislature works, you know, the end of session is usually when some things get done, and then the weeks around the budget. So we could really tee up a bunch of different items and work on trying to get them through both chambers into the governor's desk for budget season to help out. But there is going to be a huge education process because there is a tremendous turnover in the House. If I was still staying in the House, I think I'd be the 11th most senior member, and I got elected in 2008. So I mean, you know, basically 11th senior member on the Republican side. So that just tells you that basically 90 Republican reps have gotten elected from 2010 forward.
Thank you very much.
Jerry, on that front, just real quick, we are looking at having a fire and EMS caucus style of Zoom on September 19th from 10 to 12. And if you know, I'll keep you posted on that as it develops. But you know, as Representative Perry said, it's going to be hard to get an actual reception or actual, you know, something in person at this point. But at least if we can get something like that done and Zoom on the 19th, it'll be helpful. At least again, what we say today, tone it down into a message here for the 19th. And if there's something that we're able to get done across the goal line, fantastic. But also helps us set the table here for the new session when we can do something broader at that point.
Okay, thanks. I want to go to Chaz, then Bob Stakem, and then Kevin. Chaz first, and Bob about training and education, and Kevin about some things too, following up on Don's. Chaz.
So real quick, and I just spoke with Tom real quick. The money's from the community colleges. Tom, maybe you can expand on this. They weren't taken away, but they were reallocated. So it's the community colleges that are using it differently.
Yeah.
Wasn't that it was taken away.
Right.
The second thing on the fireworks legislation, I spoke with Representative Barry about this. I know it has to be re-enabled. However, I can tell you right now, it's coming to my office and I do not have the staff to take those on. So when it is re-enabled, there needs to be administrative money put aside to hire staff to take on these grants. I've got 3 people who hire grants, and we do more grants than all of PEMA by a lot. And I don't think people realize that. They might push more money out, but they don't push out close to what we do when it comes to grants. And so we have 3 more grants being pushed towards us, and I don't have the staff to do that. So the legislators are going to have to take into consideration about hiring or enabling some money for administrative staff to take care of these grants when that comes. And the other thing when it comes to grants, and I'm going to speak about the COVID grant with EMS, I'm going to speak about the fire and EMS right now. By 4 o'clock today, all the final reports are due in. We still have 172 fire and EMS companies that haven't done their final. You know, I want to tell you, when the legislators see this kind of stuff and they're getting reports from us guys, you know, I've got a responsibility to report to them what's going on. It doesn't look good for us. I mean, the EMS grant, I made 40 phone calls myself the night before to get fire companies or EMS companies to sign their darn agreement. That shouldn't have to happen. So we're our own worst enemy at times, and we've got to clean this up.
Excellent points. And I don't want to lose some of those points, which is, that is reminding me, that is a symptom of the nature of the system that we have with the many small nonprofits. I want to go to Bob in that training. I don't want to lose that because Dawn mentioned about the cost of $1,100 for a class. When we're out in the field, we hear a lot of things from people, the providers, about the cost of education. Now, Bob, Elizabeth from the Community College Association is part of this. She is actively involved. I talk to her on a regular basis. She was at our other meetings, and they want to be a partner with us. And Bob is representing them also today. So do you have a few statement about the training education? Because there is, if I believe, in one of the fireworks enabling legislation pieces, one of those is EMS education, correct? For payment for EMT courses, correct? Yes. So.
Sure, and again, I'm representing HAC, and I can speak to, you know, higher education institutes regarding the funding. And community colleges many years ago did one of 3 things. Either they continued with fire and EMS training, utilizing state funding for that. They cut back on the amount of funding they did because the funding remained stagnant, or they eliminated fire and EMS training altogether. We're very fortunate, I can speak highly at HAC, that HAC has invested in fire and EMS training, that we still get all of that state money. But when we talk about a historical approach to fire and EMS training, I'll stick just with EMS right now. You know, back in the 80s and 90s, I think in 92, I took an EMT class, the cost was $300. But back in 92, the cost for a cache of equipment, disposable equipment to provide that training didn't cost $12,000 or $15,000. So inherently, the cost to provide that training has increased tenfold over the past 20 years. So the figure of $1,100 is probably the midpoint. Right now at HAC, our EMT classes are between $925 and $1,025 just for the EMT class. National Registry charges $120 just for the certification exam, and that's hands off. They don't have any equipment just to do that certification exam. Textbooks, whether you get rented, used, or new, can range anywhere from $100 to $250. So those costs continue to go up. But as we talk about EMS education, please understand that funding alone, providing funding alone for EMS education is not going to solve the recruitment and retention issues. Over 50% of the students that enroll in EMT programs at HAC alone never enter the EMS field. They use an EMT program as a stepping stone to a career fire job, to other healthcare professions, or as is the case with many of our summer programs at college students, I'm taking it because my buddy is. So providing the training for free is certainly not the sole answer for recruitment and retention to solve the woes of EMS staffing, but it is certainly a big piece of that puzzle. So I would encourage you to reach out to your local community college and see what their process has been related to the funding that was provided for fire and EMS training.
Got it. Thank you very much. I did want to talk about I'm not sure if you're prepared to talk about the National Registry exam, Aaron, or this is one of those things that really gained a lot of traction legislatively, as you know, that created a lot of discussions in the EMS world. And again, when we look at workforce development, when we look at EMS, there was a lot of controversy going on with that. And I don't know if you want to address that right now, because it does, again, when we're working on multiple things with this project, that seems to come up also.
Sure, I'll gladly touch on it. Bob used two key words in his discussion: training and education. There's a big difference between training someone to do something and educating them on the process, and why that training, the pieces there are important to do their job. So over the course of time, we've seen the educational requirements increase, obviously the equipment increase as well too. And going through that process, the consternation that we hear about the National Registry is it tests things outside of our scope, it tests things outside of that. If we go back to the original days of the Pennsylvania state test, on a sidebar, within 8 days of it being used for the mid-Atlantic test, there was the Pennsylvania EMS study guide being sold, which was the exact test, and test compromisation occurred repeatedly with that test. That costs a significant amount of money to fix. Now moving back to the National Registry side, they're not tested based off of the initial scope, because the great thing about the scope in Pennsylvania is it aligns with the national education standards. It aligns with the national scope of practice. We are very close to what everyone gets to do nationally. So there's nothing on that test that's out of the norm. And the way the test works in the piloting process is if there's a question that may be a little bit outside the scope of practice, it doesn't count to the score that causes their pass or fail. It's designed as a pilot process and will be removed out of that to see the validity of the test question. If we were to go through and create a Pennsylvania-based test today, it creates multiple issues. One, it basically invalidates us being a compact state, which then increases the burden on our military members and their spouses coming back to Pennsylvania or coming to Pennsylvania seeking certification. Because with compact legislation, that will be expedited a little bit faster than where it is now, dropping from about 14 days to about 7 once we finalize all the connections that we need. So the discussion related back to National Registry being the problem that's keeping people out of our system is not the fact. Where we lack in our law and our capability from the department's perspective to be fair and reasonable regulators is I don't have teeth to improve our educational system. There's very few things I can do to an educational institute that's failing to perform or becoming a predatory agency as far as it comes to removing them from the ability to provide that education. The problem is we have so many instructors today that have never taken the National Registry who will stand in front of a class and tell you that's where your failure point is going to be. But in the same aspect, there's some educational institutes out there that will take the person who's failing their test at the midterm and failing other parts of the class and will carry them through the class. And at the end of the class, say, you're good to go take your test, knowing they're going to fail. And then just say it's just the registry problem. It wasn't the education coming to that point. We need to do a better job systematically and with the ability to enhance some of that regulatory enforcement to ensure we have high performing education, not training centers.
That was well stated, Aaron, but this is what I'm based as a facilitator here is how do we make that, how do we implement something like that? What do we need to do to fix that piece? Because again, why I don't want to call it widespread, but there's that sense across Pennsylvania, in a certain part of Pennsylvania, what is needed from you, what is needed from your office that we could potentially get moving in the next, next session to revamp the way the education system is, what is needed, how do we do this, work with subject matter experts, what would help the workforce development in EMS, what are the things on the education piece is one thing, and then we have the systematic things which are tied back to funding, increased funding, municipal support, authorities legislation, all those things which we'll slide on to. Do you have any pushback on that, or any Dave or Jeanette or anybody on what could that look like, or should that be an initiative for the future?
Well, that, honestly, that would be recommendation 8, which is looking at the act and regulation. And I know our educational task force is looking at what Aaron's needs are for the education institutes in regard to their ability to oversee. So I think that recommendations from that working group would generate some consideration for regulation changes, act changes, whatever the case may be. We'd have to look at each thing individually, and see how it falls. But that would be a start. And that would also help with some staffing things perhaps too. That's been discussed. I mean, these things are very in their infancy. To bring them out here and have the debate here is not appropriate, but there have been questions about the EMSVO. Needed, not needed. Is there some other way to handle that? Can we keep it, just drop the Con Ed? I'm just throwing out things that I've heard, and you know, we've traveled, Jerry, all of us have traveled to hear some concerns. But things like that, looking at staffing, looking at education training, and then looking at funding through the act, and maybe going through there and kind of clearing out bits and pieces that would help make sense for the future.
Jared, one other thing is you have to remember when these people are going to take these exams, the cognitive exams, they actually have 2 hurdles. One is the educational material that they picked up in EMT class. And for a good percentage of them, it's taking a computerized test. So for a lot of these people, the first time they've ever seen this type of a testing modality is when they go in to take their exam. If the institutes, the education institutes, had funding to provide that exposure during the class, that might be a big help, because that's apprehensive for a lot of people, especially the older generation that doesn't deal with computers on a regular basis. They don't understand how that test works. They don't, you know, they're just totally overwhelmed by that computer sitting in front of them. So, I mean, in our region, we've done some things with that. We've helped with that. We've given them test banks and questions and programs. So that's another thing that we might be able to provide if we have the funding to get those people through that testing scenario.
Absolutely. And what I'm getting at is, again, when there's a groundswell of grassroots concerns coming from that, you know, Sean's boss gets a call, Nate's boss gets a call, you know, we're wondering what's going on. And I don't want to have the view that, you know, we're the ivory tower in Harrisburg, all of us, even though we're not all from Harrisburg. What can we do? What are some things that are futuristic that we may be able to, because again, we sat in a meeting and, you know, there's people in the meeting that truly want to go back to have a guy drive the ambulance and somebody with first aid. There's truly that impression in certain counties in Pennsylvania that will help, because they feel that the current system is not working. So, and that scares me. When we have an EMS system that's been developed since 1985 till what it is now, and we're having these challenges. So with that, that's very well said. But if there's, you know, there's concepts that can be brought forward, you know, through the committees and the process, that we can get to some legislative changes that will actually make a difference in that without lowering standards. And again, we've heard that loud and clear also in some of the research that I've done, is talk to many people, and you know, people don't want to lower standards. They don't want to lower the standards, but you know, is it an accessibility issue? Do we need to have a you know, a rural, as someone mentioned, a rural caucus that puts extra effort into those certain areas of Pennsylvania? So any other discussion on EMS education before we move to the next thing?
I'll just add one piece from the community college, and while he's correct, the funding wasn't taken away specifically for that. Speaking to our county college, which we fund third state, so on. What happened was they only went to FTEs. And they used to be collectively, if I had a part-time and a part-time, that made my full-time, and I got credit for that. Those are gone. They only get full-time FTEs. That's how they get paid. So while they say, well, no, we didn't cut, they absolutely did. 100%. So I just want to make that clear, because I'm dealing with like community college coming to me saying, hey, we need extra money now because we got cut, and they call it a cut.
Got it. Anybody on Zoom have any specific feedback they'd like to give on this topic? Anyone on Zoom like to give a topic? I do not see that. So the other piece that I wanted to mention, and I'll go with Kevin, that Bob or Don brought up Pike County. And many of us know about Pike County. There was a hearing in Pike County, when Senator Reagan was chairman. There's a lot of things happening, and Pike County has had over the last year have had dramatic changes in EMS to the positive. And somebody just shared a report with me, the director up there, on how things have changed. And Don, are you able to kind of detail what happened there, all at a local level without any need for legislation? And then we'll kick it to Kevin and the County Commissioners Association, and maybe Chris on that.
So basically, Pike County, their main source of income up there is tourism. And one commissioner happened to own a ski resort. He was really sweating that he was going to lose business and the county would lose tourism money because they had no stable AML service. And they didn't. They had about 12 BLS services. They lost their ALS services. There was this one ALS service in a gated community that didn't like to come out. And they had to do something drastic, and they couldn't wait for they were waiting for the authority bill to come out. But it just sat there since its inception. So they basically held a meeting prior to budget season, pitched it to all the municipalities, said, we'll put up 2 mills. You can put up, and we'll match up to 2 mills, whatever you put in. And every municipality, but one municipality in their area or in their county submitted funding. One township, Lehman Township, actually generated $751,000 with this match between the county and the township. And they put up an ALS and a BLS service. So one township cut the response time from 26 to 12 minutes. So they made major improvements up there.
And what again, I'll kick it to Kevin, and what
let me tell you, it's a simple grant program too. So the money is submitted from the municipalities. They can either raise taxes, their due general fund. Most of them did a general fund. The tax on the county side was raised with a millage, or what they call a parcel increase. It was like $33 per person or per parcel, and nobody complained about it in the entire county. And then each municipality submits quarterly for their piece of the grant money, and then the county returns that money back to the municipality, and it has to be used for fire or EMS, and they have to tell them how to use it. But it's a quarterly grant program, that's all it is.
And what I just wanted to say, and I'll kick it, is it's just a staffing program, correct? That's what
Well, they can do whatever they want. They can start an EMS service, they can pay for staff, they can buy animals, they can do anything, but it has to be EMS related.
there's not a lot of bureaucracy behind it, correct? It was basically a grant program to get it up. So, all right, Don, because again, that's one of those unique things in Pennsylvania that is happening for a system thing. So, Kevin, are you ready I'm going to kick it to you.
Thanks.
From your efforts, you want to just give an update on the past, present, and future of what's going on with you guys?
All right, so I want to talk about the funding first, because that was very important. Counties have taken on a much greater role in funding, from the ARPA money, the CARES money. There's money blowing out of our ears, right? But none of it can really be used to help control it. We've almost doubled our budget in Butler County from all the money that's coming in, which is great. It sounds awesome. It's a bigger problem than you think it would be. The restrictions and limitations of what we're allowed to use that money for. And I'll give you an example. CARES, I could not just go hand money to my EMS. Wasn't. I hate to say it, almost cheat the system, build down my corrections officers. I could build down my sheriff's office. I can build that money down. That made it, I can now put it in my general fund. We were able to give each of our EMS providers $25,000. It's not a lot of money, but it's something. I gave each of my fire companies $15,000 out of that fund. But we had to work it in such a way. Some counties may not have known they could do that. That's a great possibility. I will also tell you that when the County Commissioners Association took this on, there was a lot of resistance because this is not a county problem. I heard that more than a million times. We talk about it all the time. We are strapped now within the margins of what we can and cannot do. There is different class of counties that can do certain things, different provisions in the code. We have to be very careful what we say a county can do, because you can't say that, carte blanche. We have what, 8 different counties? Some crazy number. And the reality is, as that money comes in, we're dealing with ambulance closures. We're dealing with county colleges that don't have the funds to provide. We are offering a tuition that we have a foundation that's covering the tuition of every EMS. Still don't have anybody. I do have questions about, and I'm jumping around, this is funding. So I'm talking about funding training. So we're looking at it again as county. We have 2 hospitals, or we have Butler Memorial Hospital, we just merged with the one in Westmoreland, but we also have the one in Clarion, and then we have the Allegheny Health Network, and then we got a great turf war. Right now, we want this area, not this area. What that? Now we want to pick and choose. That's one of the issues we're running into now. Right now, I have an entire block of Northeast Butler County that is minimally covered. Some of the work we've been doing with CCAP and the consultant that we have, which is MCM, has identified in 5 counties, by the way, we have 5-county pilot, Butler, Mercer.
I was old and like them.
Thank you. Those 5 are part of the survey process, just to try to get different parts of the state. Everyone has their own problems. That's what the report says, and they're all different. And funding is a portion of that. Another part is retention, as we've talked about. We know what the problem is. We reiterate. I would say that until we figure out the constant funding stream, I just learned something the other day. I don't know if it's true. This is what I hear. I'm talking about, when somebody has Medicaid, it pays about 60% roughly, right? And the other 40% falls to the person. Or match rate won't go after the person.
Hold on.
Right now.
Good, explain that. and then
Yeah.
you go back there.
Okay.
You get paid by Medicaid, and when you get paid, that's it. You cannot go after the patient for any balance.
Right.
So I was told they couldn't go after the patient if they had Medicare.
Medicare, you can go after the 20% deductible, that's it.
Oh, maybe it's the other way around. I had it. Thank you for that. So the other thing is, well, somebody said, well, you can literally leverage against that family. Now, this is a family obviously doesn't have a lot, but they got a big screen that they got after, I mean, like, what are you going after? And so those are the issues. So we have to raise the reimbursement. There's no question about it. As far as counties kicking in, I think we're a short-term fix. Pike did. I don't have a way to do a millage. I can't match them. I can match them with my general fund, but that's general tax dollars, which are pretty much accounted for because we didn't go above. Now we have this issue, and Pike opened up a floodgate, which is pretty interesting to me, which is not a bad thing. I'm just saying that taking a look at how they structured their funds, got buy-in from the municipalities. I love that structure. I think that's fantastic. Everyone has stake in a game, we call it. We do it with the infrastructure. Somebody said registration. We put a $5 fee under registration just so we can get going. Remember this? It went over like a lead balloon, right? And I honestly believe the state was testing the counties to see if they take on one more role. I really do. If they'll pass a $5 fee, and then it dangled out $2 million. If you pass that $5 fee, we'll give you $2 million in a match for your next bridge program. Okay.
What was that, a bridge program?
Yeah, bridge and road. It's all we can use it for. Bridge and road, $5.
Vehicle registration fee.
Yeah, and it works on trailers, RVs, motorcycles, doesn't matter. My wife was pissed. I got a lot of trailers. But I can tell you that $5 fee has helped us garner millions and millions and millions of dollars from the federal government, because now we have stake in the game. We were able to go after what they used to call the Tagger grant. It's not called it was called the Build grant. It's now called the Raise grant. We're talking infrastructure now. We leveraged $10 million to get $40 million, and we got that done. So I know there's a value in that, but I guess we're getting to the point of, if municipalities are charged with this service and they're limited to their millage, and then you have other ones say, well, you're coming no matter what, we're not doing it. And Pike did a good job of creating that leverage to get them to push in, right? I don't think it's a state problem. I don't think it's a county problem, and I don't think it's a municipal. I think it's everybody's problem. And everybody's got to have a hand in this. The authority model bought into some of that. Is it the best answer? Not for everybody. I'm going to tell you now, it doesn't work for everybody. But it's something better than what we can do in many of the areas that you talked about, a rural caucus. In those areas, they need some. They have minimal amounts of tax coming into the municipality, and they're the ones in charge. So that's my biggest concern on the funding piece. All right. What we've been doing is working with MCM, and DCD has funded the study, and I'll let them take over from there and where we're at, because
Jared.
while I sit there, it's going. Yeah.
Can
Good.
I just want to say thank you for saying it's an everybody problem.
Yeah,
Instead of, it's not the state, it's not the county, it's not the township, it's not ours, it's yours.
right,
So thank you for saying that.
absolutely. I mean, we gotta be in this.
Yeah, so I guess just a status update on where we are with the MCM Pilot Project. So as Kevin noted, we have the 5 pilot counties. So MCM pulled together our results from our survey findings. We sent out surveys to the providers within that 5 county regions of the Butler, Mercer, and then the Lake County, Sullivan, Tioga. And gathered a bunch of raw data. It was a massive undertaking. Developing that survey was crazy. And so they've developed those results. This book that's like this big, that we're still kind of working through. And what they're doing from there is taking that raw data, essentially synthesizing that into a report that means something. So, looking at this information, what can we garner from it? And then what are potential next steps and solutions? So they're also looking at statute, they're identifying roadblocks. So how Kevin mentioned, there are certain classes of counties that can't do appropriations. Like there's some weird provisions about 7th and 8th class counties they can and can't give money to. If a municipality has already given money, whatever. Like there's a lot of just weird stuff. The county code is really old. That stuff happens. So they're working on kind of fleshing out some of those things a little bit more in depth than any of us ever could have, looking at, how can counties be a part of the solution. And the one thing I want to add about the Pike study, and this came up when we had our EMS task force back in 2019, is that notion of the county buy-in being also community buy-in. So the commissioners, they raised the millage and were able to essentially, it was like a $33 increase for a property taxpayer, right? And they said they didn't really have a lot of pushback. Kevin mentioned the $5 fee. It's all about how you sell it. It's all about making sure you have those partnership buy-ins. Because one of the reasons when we discussed the authority model being even a potential solution out of our task force was you can throw money at a problem, but if the administration and the oversight is not there, what are you fixing? So, the fund, as everyone's kind of noted, funding is only one part of that solution. So how can you have that more community-based solution where the county can get on board and say, look, we know this isn't our responsibility, but we have an obligation to our taxpayers to make sure they're safe, right? So looking at all of those things together and how they can gel. And I think to circle back on the MCM report, I think it's due out here in the next month, 2 months. It's ended up taking them a lot longer than they thought it would, because I think where we started and where we ended up going, while it was completely necessary to expand the scope of where we went, are completely different things. So just stay tuned for more information on that. We, just like these reports, we hope that doesn't sit on the shelf. We hope that's going to be a way to kind of give counties and municipalities a way to have dialogue and conversations to make meaningful reforms outside of all of these things that we're talking about. So looking at culture changes, looking at community buy-in and solution, and looking at it more from that way. So you have kind of your legislative solutions, and then you have the rest of the solutions, right? So those local based solutions.
That's very good, excellent to hear, because I'm very interested in those, what are those solutions and how to get to that. Again, that administrative, you said administrative and another structure piece again, because again, throwing money at a system that's not working very well is probably maybe not the way to go.
I'd like to add to that, the outcome of that survey is a toolbox. The county commissioners, through the County Commissioners Association, kind of own it, but sell it. And what it is activating the county commissioners to get involved, right? That's part of what we heard. It's not the state, it's not the local, it's everybody, right? And so how do you get county commissioners that have said for however long they've been there, not my problem, not touching, not my problem, not touching, you all hear it, right? How do you activate them? How do you get them involved? This is how, right? So now we got this system. I want to go back to funding, one more piece I just forgot about, the opioid funding. So I helped through CCAP, I was on a negotiating team on how to spend those funds. And while we got a little bit in there for EMS and so on, it's about the training. It's really about that. It's not about handing money to a system. It doesn't work. If you've seen Exhibit E, it doesn't have an exact system to directly go to you. We did do one thing that was, well, two things. One is, first of all, it doesn't go directly to the state, it goes into a trust fund, so it has to stay within the fund. Exhibit E is wide enough that it has some flexibility. And it doesn't go directly to the SCA or the single county authority, which is the drug and alcohol portion of our world in county government. It goes directly to the county commissioners. So if we have a way to work within the system and still check the box for Exhibit A, that's my plan. We have to figure out what that is, and that's what we're doing. And thankfully, I was appointed to one of the 13 people in the state trust board, along with Jennifer Smith, the secretary of DDAP. We've been talking about how do we get this into the right hands where we need it. So I have hope. I don't know where we're going with this yet. The board has just literally formed. And we just pushed the first check out yesterday. So a lot of people, you're going to hear, oh, they got money, but they got to have a plan to go with the money. They got to have a plan that matches that money and what the expectations are. So I wouldn't go running after it, but I would make sure that you're sitting at a table somewhere in your county with those dollars, because they're all building teams. That's what I would tell you.
So I want to throw it to either Chris or Nate or Sean, or probably Chris and Nate, about anything with the EMS system, the authorities, legislation and things like that. Chris, you want to introduce yourself?
Chris Ramsey, Legislative Director for State Senator Lisa Baker. She's the prime sponsor of Senate Bill 698, County Authority Bill. With all the work that CCAP and others did to help get us to that point, to have a bill introduction. And then, Don's point, I think, was really good as well, that so much is changing with the landscape, and we're all being forced to, and us, we're not on the front lines, but just to adjust and evolve our thinking, with how we solve these problems that are happening rather quickly and maybe unpredictable with what we're seeing, but we definitely see trends with everything. So concept wise, with the county authority bill, I mean, the beauty of that is, to Kevin's point, it's going to work for some that need a framework to help make it work, and others, they don't see that working so well in their county or their communities, and that's fine. It is, we always hear this phrase about another tool in the toolbox. It's another option for people. So there's value to that, and I think that's something that's maybe even more relevant today with the ever-changing world of EMS. So I appreciate the conversation here. We're struggling with some things back in my boss's district, which is very rural in some cases, and in some counties it's still very volunteer, and that is a reality, that we have diversity in this state in a lot of different ways, and that's but one of them. So it's I think different levels of government also, what Ken said, this is our problem. But different levels of government are starting to look at it differently, I think, now too. And trying to say, okay, we can't sit back and point fingers different ways. We all have a seat at the table and try to help solve these problems, because they're real. And in the case of Pike, it's nobody wants to be that place that they don't have a hospital in the county, but where the ALS provider picks up and leaves and shuts down service. You don't want to be that place that has a BLS crew struggling to get out of the garage and do the service and stop to pass off a patient to another provider to take a person to the hospital. You don't want to be in that. And frankly, in this day and age, shame on us if that ever happens, because we're better than that. And we can find these solutions. So.
Thank you, Chris. Anything you need on?
Yeah, well, Jerry invited me out last night in Lancaster, in the northwest region of Lancaster, looking at something similar to what Pike has done. And it's out through a community meeting, and a lot of the same discussion here. Nobody likes a new government entity. Nobody, people are leery of authority. People don't like, new fees. Residents don't like new fees. I think everybody in this room, none of us want a new government entity. None of us like a new fee. None of us like, but tell me what's a better option than that. If there's a better option, let us know. So again, we're not, we're still looking at this. There's a chance that we can still move this, whether it gets through the goal line as in terms of the governor's signature between now and the end of the session. It's very difficult, but we'll keep you posted.
Jess.
Just Barry, I just want to say, and I agree with everyone, it is everyone's problem. But the law is written for the local level, and I can say this now because I don't work in local government. The fact is, the locals are going to use the fire and EMS service as much as they can until they've got nothing left. And we don't say no to them. And it's just, it's sad that it's come to that, but I do believe, it has to change and everybody's got to get involved, but with that, it can't just be carte blanche. There needs to be rules attached to it. I mean, and the chief of Chambersburg sitting right here. There's volunteer fire companies that pass his fire have to go into the next town to respond and they don't call him. That's not fair to our citizens. So if we're gonna make these changes, we need to do it the right way.
Applied the same philosophy to EMS. We're having the same issue. We have an available unit here. This report that MCM did, they said, oh, how many deep do you go to get an ambulance? 5, 6, 7. I said, don't stop there. Keep going 8, 9, 10. We're down to 14. Some of these counties are reporting 14. Like waiting. That's time lost. But we have a system that we can track where they all are. They can plug in and plug. If I'm unavailable, I'm unavailable. But if I call you, we have that ability. We have it right now. But we can't apply it because every municipality has the right to pick their own. That's a problem. And they enforce it. So while I have an ambulance sitting here, I can't send it.
So thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Chaz. Thank you, Nate. But again, we're going to take a break here very quick. But again, I'd be happy to report that I did talk to the people from Northwest Lancaster. Got 12 municipalities involved. The municipal leaders met this morning and they voted to continue full force with the project. Even though the public meeting, when people show up at a public meeting, it's very interesting to hear what they have to say, but they're moving forward. So anyone on the Zoom meeting have any feedback or questions about specific EMS related issues that we'd like to talk about before we take a break?
Hey, Jerry.
Yes.
Bob Brooks from the PPFFA. I've been trying to keep peace here. I'm at work, so excuse me if I have to go. My other guys that are on in the same boat, we're trying to piecemeal it all together and be involved here. But in the EMS in Bethlehem, I can speak on Bethlehem in particular. I have guys dropping here. They're not my guys. They're not part of the department, but I know a lot of them, if that makes any sense. But these guys are being run ragged. Men and women, not just guys. I'm sorry, just the term of but they're being run ragged and they're dropping off as fast as they can hire 2, 3 or 4 are going off with honestly mental issues, PTSI being one of them. I heard it mentioned earlier, and it's such a big thing right now. They have a week called Hell Week. Nobody should have to go to work under a week called Hell Week, right? And I think we need to really concentrate on this issue as a whole to try and maintain. And I think if we're running them ragged and we're not, I hate to say, we're not paying them to run ragged. I know down in Philadelphia, just speak with them the other day, they're having some issues, getting people in that, there's some of their people can make $200,000 as a paramedic. Do you know how many hours they're working to get that money? It's crazy. So the PTSI, I wanted to mention on it because I heard it mentioned, and I appreciate the mention, is a major malfunction in the industry, and we really have to look at that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bob. And Bob is the president of the PPFA, and Kevin Ressler is one of his vice presidents there online. And I've had communication with Bob to make sure that they're continuing to be part of that process. Anyone else on Zoom have any feedback about the EMS issue? Is there anything that we did not capture or would like to discuss specifically regarding EMS? Anything else that specifically that you guys would like to bring up about EMS?
I'll just say one thing. We don't like fees and that stuff. I think a lot of that is how the local governments present that. I think if you presented that you needed a fire and EMS tax, you're not gonna get pushback like you would if you get, say, oh, we need to raise general taxes for the general fund. So I think it's all in how it's presented, that could help the local governments.
Yeah, do you have something? Okay. Jeanette,
So, and maybe I missed this, is for you. The 25 million, what, was there any left that was not distributed?
From the COVID grant, if there was,
You don't need to know.
I don't
I guess
know,
what
there was very, very little. I mean, I think there was, turned out 8 companies didn't get it, I think.
Okay, I just was wondering if there was,
And that has to go back to the federal government.
it does.
Yes.
That, okay,
We
see,
can't
you
hold
didn't
on.
read my mind. All right. Okay, darn, all right,
Good try.
thank you.
Jerry, Jim Carstetter. Question, we've had a little over an hour of discussion here, and I don't think there's anything really new that came up in any of that discussion that we haven't talked about ad nauseum. And we've heard about the short one-way we were going to have in the fall and the massive turnover that we're going to have for the next session. So I guess my question is there anything specific that's going to come out of this meeting dealing with EMS that we want to address in that short runway we have this fall?
Just the enabling legislations for actions.
Yeah, for the fireworks.
yeah, Jim, that was, I don't know if you heard that or not, it would be the enabling legislation for the fireworks money. That was the short-term thing that everyone's talking about here.
With the administration.
Yeah,
I think it's in the fireworks law, isn't it?
it's not.
Okay,
All they
thanks.
did is give all those, pushed all those.
Thanks, Jim. Do you have anything else to add on that, Jim?
Hey, Jerry, it's AJ Bonnie, if I get a second.
Go ahead, AJ.
Hey, just real quick, I've been listening and also paying attention a little bit, and I agree a lot with this response stuff and, you know, ambulances passing other ambulances up to get where they need to go. But a lot of that goes back, because we run into some of that here in Fayette, and we talk to our 911 center, and it gets into a situation where the 911 center says, well, we have to send the ambulance that they prefer as their backup. And I said, what's wrong with sending the closest available? You know, when we're running into a situation, I mean, that just doesn't, I think they hit the nail on the head, where at the end of the day, we're out there for the individual neighbor, the person in our community, not what it says on the door. So I don't know how we get around that, but I know a lot of times when we get some of these ambulance services, you know, and same way with fire, I mean, we're not going to kid that there's definitely territorial disputes, but some of these don't want to give other ambulance services, you know, that little breath of air that might keep them in business or push them out of business. It turns into that territorial situation. Getting back to what they says about some of the tuitions and, you know, the free end of it. What we do in Fayette for fire, the county association, whether it's a junior fireman or it's a firefighter too, it's a free ride. The county association picks up the bill. We're very fortunate to be able to have the funding in place to be able to do that, working with our county commissioners and some of our local government. But by saying that, we're seeing that, you know, on the ambulance end, whenever we try to do that, it turns into more of a contract. You know, hey guys, okay, we'll pay for your EMT, or we're gonna pay for your paramedic, but you have to, you know, you can't do that just to get that paid fire job. You need to run on that ambulance. You need to sign up and give us so much time back to be able to make that work, because it's just not, you're right. I mean, there's guys, you're right. My buddy's taking it, so I'll go take it, things of that nature. But on the local government end, I've had EMS people come to me as the township saying, hey, you mandate garbage. Why can't you mandate EMS? And the problem we've seen with that was, and you guys will love this analogy, when garbage day comes, if you put a dead body out there just so it's in a carpet, he's going to take it. If I have a wreck at one of my intersections and I need 2 ambulances, and Joey slid in the second brace and breaks a leg, and then grandma's having a heart attack, where am I getting my 4 ambulances? You know, it just doesn't, you know, that provider, it really taxes, and it can happen. I mean, it's no different. So, you know, I'm listening to what we're saying here, and it's making a lot of sense. But at the end of the day, they're right. It's all of our responsibilities. But to get that buy-in is the problem.
So thank you, AJ. Chad?
Did you want to break that?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I'm getting close to breaking, but I just wanted to say again, this brought up a couple times. Is there a way to ensure the closest unit concept? Is there a way to promote the closest unit concept legislate the closest unit concept.
Standard
What's that?
cover at the authority level.
Well,
And-
Jerry, again, local government's in charge of that. I mean, they sit there and say we delegate our ambulance service. That's fine. If we want to delegate that ambulance service, we also delegate the closest available. When you're not able to run, the closest available got to be dispatched. That's got to be something that basically you step over the ambulance provider and goes through the 911 center. I mean, they're the ones that know where they're at.
You're right.
I'd
on.
like to, if I could, I'd like to step in a little bit here. We've gone through a kind of comprehensive planning process in Erie County in developing a new comprehensive EMS plan for the county, which every provider had to buy into. And I'm under the assumption that Act 37 requires that we have a comprehensive EMS plan as it relates to answering calls and quality assurance and so on and so forth. And what we have found out since we've gone into that, when we tie that into the PEMA requirements for dispatch protocols, is that we seem to be far more interested in making sure that somebody answers in 3 minutes than we are whether or not they arrive in 30 minutes on site. So if I answer in 10 and arrive in 20, that's no good. But if I answer in 3 and arrive in 30, that's fine. That's a problem. And the fact that you can have licensed providers out there that report themselves out of service except for 4 hours a day and be able to maintain their license and transfer their calls to another out-of-district agency with no adverse effects upon them, and then still drop 50% of their calls during that 4 hours that they do report themselves in service and nothing be done about it, is a problem that's just overstressing the ones that are meeting the requirements of the rules and regulations under Act 37. And it's getting more acute and nothing's being done about the ones that are not meeting the licensing requirements. Everybody just says, yeah, it's a problem, and looks the other way.
Excellent representation, Chad, and then Aaron.
My question wasn't if you wanted to break. You just looked like you wanted to, and I wanted to, you wanted me to wait till after the break.
Yeah.
And I'm not disagreeing with any of this, with the funding aspect, so on and so forth. But it's clear throughout EMS history, especially in the past 10, 15 years, we need to take some of that funding, and I think, and start looking at other options as far as community paramedicine, because we're not, as Bob said, you're going to a hell week. So you're burning out EMS providers for a class 3 headache or a toothache, which is also impacting the healthcare system in general. Community paramedicine, being able to take it to an urgent care, things like that, that funding should also be looked at for that, as far as Medicare, Medicaid funding from the community or from the county, state. I mean, I don't have the answer, but if we can sit here and beat our heads against the wall to try and educate the public, and it's not going to help with stopping those class 3 headaches, toothache, and I stubbed my toe 6 days ago and now it still hurts, but we need an ambulance.
Absolutely. We're gonna go to Aaron, and then we're gonna take a little break. So go ahead, Aaron.
So to the point about the countywide or broader response plans, there's not a requirement in the act that those exist. What that countywide or broader response plan is designed to do is prevent I believe it was Commissioner Boozle who had said the 14 levels deep in one area. That's because we had so many agencies that were out of service and were never communicating with your neighbor, because I didn't want to tell Dawn I wasn't available. And it was creating the proverbial holes in our EMS system that were growing and growing. And it's taking that agency that's in service 24/7, meeting their licensure requirement, putting undue stress on them, because now they don't know when they should staff up, when they shouldn't. It was to open the doors of communication so everyone knew who was available, where it wasn't in the system. But to your point, sir, about everyone's turning their blind eye to it, that's not the case. And I will tell you that with my team at the Bureau, we are becoming a little bit more engaged in what past administrations in my role have allowed. And we're going out and re-educating those agencies. We're having informed discussions with elected officials at the municipal level just a couple weeks ago, I was in Somerset County dealing with an issue there about an agency closing. We're not turning a blind eye, but we're trying to re-educate the system to meet the needs of Pennsylvania when it comes to EMS. Unfortunately, it's a huge lift to do, and it's not going to happen overnight, but that countywide or broader response plan is to prevent the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, find someone to finally go help somebody. And Chad, to your point about the community paramedicine and treat no transport, those are all key points to our system, but one of the big things, and it needs to change at the federal level first, is we need to stop being relegated to a transportation entity and be considered clinicians, educated clinical providers, which what we are, but we're not paid that way. We're paid as a transportation service. And when it comes down to it, part of your point of educating the public, and I think I heard Dave talking about it over here. I have a headache. I'm going to take Tylenol. I'm not going to call the ambulance. Well, we see so much of, television sensationalizing 911 and everyone's medical emergencies completed in 30 minutes or less. We don't have that capability until we can educate the public on what our true essential service is. We're in a losing battle here.
I agree with you 100% on that. And I wasn't, my point wasn't that in general, but you're correct. We need to pay the piper.
All right, I have 2 more comments on Zoom and then we're going to take a break. Jerry Brandt first, Bill Genoway second.
Thanks, Jerry. Real short, real quick. I'm in Cambria County, and as of the beginning of the year, our county went to dispatching the closest unit. They bought some sort of a computer program that uses Google Maps, et cetera, and figures out who the closest unit is to the call. They did this based on an opinion that was written by their solicitor saying that he felt that the county would be liable if the closest unit was not sent and something happened. Thanks.
Thank you. Bill Genoway.
Thanks, Jerry. I just wanted to mention that Montgomery County has had the capability through the use of AVLs for some time now to be able to dispatch the closest unit. Unfortunately, it is my understanding, Chaz may be able to confirm this, that the 3 largest providers of emergency medical services in the county either do not turn them on or do not make them available. So when you have the 3 largest providers that don't do it, or even 1 large provider that doesn't do it, it adversely affects the entire countywide system.
So, Bill, you are correct to a point there. I know the issue with the one service is 2 ambulances or 2 hospitals. So they wouldn't be getting their calls because everybody else would be taking them from them. So they wouldn't be getting their monies. That's their biggest issue with it.
Right.
So it's
Because
all about-
everybody else's ambulance is at the hospital and they're going to be closer than they are. So they're going to get dispatched to the calls without them being able to have to do it.
Yeah. So it's not the money instead of service delivery.
It's absolutely money.
Yeah.
We're talking about money now, are
That's
we?
the only way we get paid is if you.
I have 3 hospitals in
Okay, all right, I remember this a lot. Great discussion, again, great discussion. I've got, again, our short-term stuff, our long-term stuff. Again, I'd like to think about the possibility in the future of having some smaller work groups come out of this, multidisciplinary work groups with all the disciplines, maybe specific EMS moving forward, fire. We're going to take a break till 10 minutes after, and then we're going to kick off with the fire discussion, and we'll keep moving forward. So thank you very much. Restrooms are straight out the door. What you got?
Other departments. Yes. Yeah.
Please start working toward your seats. Okay, I just, there's a couple more people that jumped on Zoom. I want to make sure that we recognize that we're, that started. Joel Landis from Somerset County is on. Greg Jakubowski, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure thing. Again, Joel Landis, I'm the Director of Emergency Services for Somerset County. I was served on SR6 in a different capacity, but I'm the current director here in Somerset. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. And we did receive your text, your message in about Joel asked a question about finding out the number of ambulance services that have gone out of business within the last 5 years. And I passed that off to Dr. Rohn, and he's going to be getting Director of EMS and get that information out. Rich Wagner, could you introduce yourself also, please?
Rich Wagner, Pennsylvania Association of Hazmat Technicians, also fire police.
Thank you very much, Rich. Greg Jakubowski.
Yeah, good afternoon, folks. Sorry, work is taking me away from some of this meeting, but I was on the SR6 original committee, retired retired fire chief, volunteer in Bucks and Montgomery County for 44 years. And I'm also the managed fire protection for Buckeye Pipelines across the United States and the Caribbean.
Thank you, Greg. Kevin Ressler.
Hey, Kevin Russell, Recording Secretary of Pennsylvania Professional Firefighters.
Thank you. And I just want to give Bob the opportunity again. Bob Brooks, you want to just introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Bob Brooks, President, Pennsylvania Professional Firefighters, Firefighter City, Bethlehem.
Thank you very much, Bob. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner McGarvey to do an update from the Fire Commissioner's office. Obviously, throughout the process, we've had a couple of different commissioners involved in this, and Chaz recently assumed his position. So now I'm going to turn it over to Tracy to talk a little bit also.
Okay, so I'll leave the whole recruitment retention stuff to you, Tracy. You can handle all that. State Fire Advisory Board, we're still working on getting this final seat in Region 9 set. Once that's done, we'll get that moving. I'll be honest with you, in looking at this board, I think there's too many regions. I don't think they're properly represented. For instance, Philadelphia is in Region 9. Pittsburgh's out in I forget the region they're in, but I really think they should probably, Pittsburgh, Allentown, and Philadelphia should have their own region because they face different issues than the rest of some of the other fire service. So once we get situated, get that going, we'll probably look at that once the terms are done. Recommendations on relief funding. That's going to be one of the first things that the State Fire Advisory Board looks at. The allocations, what should they be? How should the formula be distributed? What's eligible, what's not? Right now, it's still kind of pretty broad, but some of the stuff is still very specific in there. The Relief Association stuff has come over to the State Fire Commissioner's office, and we're pretty much running it with the exception of the audit right now. The use of the board, my outlook on this is to look at it for standardization of the fire service, mental health, physical fitness, look at cancer, all that kind of stuff. And set up committees with that, use the board to look at those things for our fire service. I talked about the fire relief formula, Act 91/2020. As I said, we assume management of the VFA. We're in communication with the AG's office all the time. The audits stay there, and we're setting up the policies and procedures. There is a final report due by November 30th. However, I've spoken with Nate and the Senator, and we're hoping to push that off a year because I do believe that the formula, once it comes up, will probably be set for the next 40 or 50 years. And if we're going to do this, we need to take the time to do it right. There was legislation that passed and modernized and stabilized the fire insurance, the fire relief.
So we'll have a minimum of 85 million a year going in there. And that'll be spread throughout the fire companies. It's 85 million or 8.5% total insurance premium. They have fixed the issue with the insurance companies. And there's the insurance commission is all on board with all this, so it's working well. State training, I think let Tom go into that, where we're at with the CADIS and all those things. Looking at getting the statewide registry for the firefighters. I talked to you about the grants, and I came into the EMS grant right in the middle of it. That had to be one of the most frustrating experiences I've ever been through. And hopefully we can find ways as we go forward to streamline the processes. The Fire and Emergency Medical Service Loan Program, which is, as was known for years as the VLAP program, it's open. 4 o'clock today, after final reports in from last year. They said we got 172. I still haven't done that, but that's down from 416 yesterday. We talked about the fireworks legislation, 1.5 million for EMS grants, 250,000 for fire grants. But again, all this takes people to do this, and I don't have the staffing, so we will need some of that to be put towards the administration of the grant process. If we're going to be able to administer these grants in the Office of State Fire Commissioners. Transfers, as you know, firehouse is out at the end of this year. Emergency reporting is what ESO is pushing everyone over to. We do have a vendor that we are looking at right now. It's in the procurement process. However, I'm not allowed to say the name because it hasn't been fully vetted. Once we were able to do that, I'll let everybody know. Again, recruitment retention. We had one person we offered to one of the 3 positions to, they backed out. Unfortunately, so Tracy and I are going to be looking at the job description and see what we can do to possibly adjust it and look to get more people on board. Hiring the fiscal tech. I gotta say, hiring people with the state is unbelievably arduous. I mean, it takes forever. Takes forever. It's how and when you lose someone and then you can't hire someone for 8 months, it just pushes everything back. So hopefully that'll get streamlined in the future. One things that I'm looking at for the future is some kind of fire registry or licensing for fire companies. Because we say we have 2,400 fire companies. I know Tracy's working on a thing right now, and I think we're talking to the EMAs, we've got 1,800, but that still doesn't include the industrial fire departments and all that stuff. So we really have no clue how many fire companies we got in the state. And I think the fire service needs to kind of go the lines of EMS and have some kind of registry where local municipalities will sign off on who their fire companies are. And then we can go forward with that and proceed with grants. Like for instance, I have the township, I'm not sure, that sent in 10 grants for 10 fire companies. However, they only have 4 stations I found out. And there's a lot of that going on as I start delving into things here. I'm finding there's a lot of that happening. I know we have got the companies that have merged together and they got the line down the middle of what this is, but 4 stations, 10 companies. I mean, somebody's not doing something right. So we will be watching it a lot closer. And we've got people using putting names of those certified that aren't no longer in their fire company, so they can get grants. As I reminded that chief, you're relying on a government document, and according to our legal, we will pursue it. So don't be messing around with it. What else? Want to look to register the number of trained firefighters, excluding social members. I was asked how many fire companies or how many firefighters were in this one county, and when I got the report back, there's one fire company that had 275 firefighters. I know that ain't true. But, you know, and actually there's 2 or 3 that had that kind of, but we all know they're including their social members in that. So we somehow have to get a registry in place that's going to tell us how many firefighters we got, how many firefighters we got, so that we can begin to move this fire service forward. We are looking at putting a strategic plan together for the office. You know, over the years since the office has started, it's been restructured now twice, latest with Act 91. And duties have been thrown at it here and there, and things have just kind of stayed the same, and they've thrown them on people and some people that don't have the experience in those areas. So I'm looking at all that and looking at how we're going to move forward, and some of that, you know, I'm thinking myself, you know, the office probably needs to be totally restructured and how we're going about things, and probably renamed. It's more than the office of the State Fire Commission. We do a lot more than that. It's not just me, so we should look at that going forward. Last I got is Pennsylvania State Weekend is July 22nd through 23rd, 2023. Spread the word. We'd love to have you down in Emmitsburg. That's all I got. Any questions?
Absolutely. Well, keep us informed on that. You know, again, I understand that concept of staffing to implement grant programs and manage grant programs. And as we as you more fully understand what the needs are and how you know, we understand the administrative process to get those moving, what could be done to help that. Because again, getting that money out to the fire departments is extremely important. However, when you have fire departments that are not complying with things, that's concerning also. So
I just tell Sean I had a fire company email me. The state fire commissioner shouldn't be set deadline. Well, I don't set deadlines, legislature do. It just goes to show you people aren't reading the documents. So
and you know, again, it looks at the larger administrative picture of what's happening at the local level when those basic functions are not being, is there a different structure that could be done where a municipality helps in the smaller townships with less than 2,000 people, maybe they could help with certain things or those type of things to, you know, it's great to get the money into the organization, but you know, people are not applying, that's a concern.
let Tracy or Tom.
Tom, we gotta do Tom, Tracy, Tracy.
I'll go first.
Okay.
I have to leave.
She's gotta leave, yes.
Yeah. At the graduation tonight, so. So there's a list of things, and Jerry did send out the full detailed report to everybody, so hopefully if you have questions, you can come back. So website's been up since February. There is a lot of information on there. I should say the web page for recruitment and retention. There is a lot of resources on there and information. We're trying to keep events and classes posted on there when we have those coming up as far as recruitment and retention and the fire and EMS administrator courses. The big thing with this program, and I heard from that side early on saying about it's not just one system that fits all, or it's not one fix that fits all. And when I wrote the concept paper for this program for recruitment and retention, that was the key thing is Pennsylvania is so diverse that us setting a standard or setting guidelines or whatever from our level wouldn't work. So it's working to address the things at the high level of the state, but also working with the local level. So what I did was created focus groups. So we have focus groups right now for the southwest, southeast corner, and now the central and northern tier have all engaged. And those folks are people who are volunteering their time to help us work and create the information that's needed and to help educate people, put programs in place. And they're doing a great job with everything, and very thankful to have them. One of the big things they're working on, and they're very passionate about what they do, is the junior firefighters. So they are developing or have developed a pathway document, which basically extracts information out of the compliance manual that we have online, and it'll become a guide for fire officers and fire departments. Basically, they can look at it and say, okay, 14 years old, they can do this, 15, 16, 17, and they can clear to 18 plus. So that is currently, we're waiting for the academy just to update some of the MSAs In that venture, we were able to talk with Tom and the staff at the academy and add 13 additional courses that junior firefighters can take now. So they're not as limited. And you will see if you read the report, there's an example of how that document will be laid out. So we're hoping to really, their goal is to have that done at the end of July. And as soon as we have all the information and we can get that link, we will get it up on our website as a resource for those fire departments and those fire officers. The second part of the junior firefighter program stuff was we're working with individuals in our group who are teachers of protective services or CPC programs, or their ETAs who work with those programs to make sure that they align with the Commonwealth's or our entry level program. So when they come out of that, they can test for firefighter 1. So that is a goal of theirs. So at this point, they are working on developing a standard junior firefighter curriculum for the Commonwealth to use. That proposal will go back to the commissioner for consideration. That's also going to help with the child labor laws that he has that information. But these are experienced people that are firefighters, volunteer firefighters, and they have a dual role of being a teacher, a CTC fighter. We're also looking at programs outside of the school district, and we have a very good model coming out of York, Pennsylvania. That's called Cadet 21. That started out as a single fire department, now 4 fire departments, and it was 7, now it's countywide, and now they're meeting with school districts. So in just the last couple of months, it's kind of flourished into something bigger that they didn't think was going to happen, but it is aligning, their documents are aligned with what we're creating. So we were able to bring that chief on from York County to help that program, make sure that everything is synchronous as they go forward with that. So that becomes a good model, then we can share that information for others across the state. The tax credit program guidance, that document is in draft. We're waiting for the final revisions and reviews from legal counsel. We're hoping to have that up and posted on the website in the next few weeks. So that'll be there for guidance. And data is another big thing. I've heard a lot of people talk about data today. So we did try to do a survey, a recruitment retention survey on the website. We started at Fire Expo weekend just to kind of get feedback, how interested people would be with a registry, a firefighter registry similar to EMS. And if they're a cross-trained provider, what would that registry look like? So, you know, the ultimate goal would be go to one place where they could get their EMS and their fire credentials in one spot. So that, and if we offered free recruitment retention programs or other programs related to that, would they be willing to participate? So there is an example in the full report that I said. The other thing we're looking at is data from the educational training agencies, looking at diversity from a very high level, just because we can't collect very specific information, but we're looking at the generations. And, you know, we've gotten 10 years, 20 years, some 5 years. So we're starting to collect that data to look in the different areas and the areas that the EPAs are serving to see what is the diversity, because we have a group in the education training focus group that then wants to address how do we get that diverse community interested in fire and EMS, and how do we, you know, educate them, how do we get them interested? So they're all working together. We're waiting on more data to come in from the ETAs. We've had a couple submit stuff back, but we need more data to be able to make any type of determinations or move forward with the program. OSSC fact sheet on our website. There is now a fact sheet that educates people about the Office of State Fire Commissioner, and that we are one bureau or one office with 2 locations. Our executive office is in Harrisburg at the FEMA building, and our training division is in Lewistown, which is referred to as State Fire Academy. It's just a brief overview, and there's contact information and what each of those locations provide as far as services. So that's out there as a reference. We already talked about the specialist positions. We'll go back at that next week here and try to address that. And the education and training, we are working with the I-Chiefs to try to get their recruitment and retention coordinators certification course here. My goal is to have that in 3 different areas, but what now I've challenged I-Chiefs to do is, can we do synchronous where the initial instructor is in one place, but can we have 3 or 4 other facilitators in different locations through the Commonwealth at the same time that would help facilitate the activities that go with that training. My goal is to reach more. So if they're willing to do that, they've never done it, and they're willing to talk about it. So we're continuing those talks and initially slated those for fall into spring of next year. So I'll continue to work with iChiefs on that. The other thing that's coming up is the development of a recruitment retention modular training programs. And I started that when I took the position, and really going out and about to the town halls and meeting with locales to find out what were the issues to address. And Jerry and I had this discussion. The bottom line is, a lot of people don't know where to start. You can talk about funding, you can talk about safer grants, you can talk about this, that, and the other thing. They really have no clue of where to even start to do recruitment retention. You know, you should market with yard signs, or you should do this, you should do that. So what we're doing is, the mindset is we're creating a core component, and then there will be a separate module for marketing, staffing, funding, those types of things. And my ultimate goal, and I have big goals, but my ultimate goal is to be able to provide this in person, but also online, similar to what labor and industry did. The labor and industry, when we came up and had to have these safety committees for EMS, labor and industry did training online, so you could schedule on their calendar and take those. I would like to try that same concept to reach more people in the Commonwealth with recruitment and retention education. So there's more to come with education. We're also working on a mental health. So the focus groups just started to wind up individuals on that group that are focusing on mental health. Two areas that I've been working with when we dug down into behavior changes, such as driving apparatus under the influence of alcohol. And it was a change in behavior for individuals. We dug down deeper that really this has to do with, you know, the hours of time they put into training, going on calls. And as someone mentioned before, they have Hell Week. You know, I think that's every day. So we're also trying to get them to realize that engaging the community in other positions that they could be doing to release a firefighter from second or third duty would help. So when we explain about that is, I grabbed a guy at the Senators game and safety beacon and said, "Are you a firefighter?" He said, "No." This is my short story. I said, "Have you ever visited your local fire department?" "No." I said, "Do you realize they need your help?" "No, I didn't." And we chatted. I gave him my card and said, "Do me a favor, go visit your local fire department, because they need people to help with fundraising, mowing grass, maintenance of facility, somebody to take notes during a meeting, someone, if they're a captain or whatever, to be a treasurer. They need other people to take those jobs over so the firefighters can concentrate on being firefighters." And the guy said to me, "You know what? Any marketing we've ever seen, they're only asking for firefighters." So the light bulb went off. And we're not asking for the right things when we're marketing. So we're trying to shift people's thought process now. It's not just marketing about firefighters, it's marketing about everything else you need. The ancillary stuff that can help support that. So we're working on that as an education. And the last big thing on my summary was an OSSC report card. As the commissioner said, we have so many things going on. He's commissioner number 5 for me. So, and I don't want a commissioner number 6, or I'm retiring. So what I did was I started all this.
Governor-elect, whatever that is.
I created a report card. What I did is I extracted out everything out of the SR6 document that related to fire, and I created a report card. It's a to do, we're doing, or it's done. And that's going to give us a mechanism to track the status of the things we address as we go as a highlight. And then they'll have an area to go in and put the details in a summary, like an executive summary. So that's going to help us all in both locations to track everything that we have.
But Jerry, one other thing, another thing I signed to is that I was amazed at the number of firefighter injuries. And you know, my first 3 months, I had 3 line of duty death funerals I went to. I've been here 5 months, but we're averaging about 25 to 28 injuries a month. Something's wrong out there. Or are they being cowboys? Are they just not trained properly? I don't know. So Tracy, I've assigned her to start tracking this so that we can see if maybe, it's occurring in certain areas of the state, what's going on. And hopefully we'll be able to address that.
future.
Thank you. And just, we're going to go down through each association, but
Jerry, just one more thing. We talked about the number of fire departments in Pennsylvania. So within 3 months' time, I've been able to, 65 of the 67 counties have reported we're at 1,734 departments. Now, that's all preliminary, because I want to take those and put it into format and take it back to the County Chiefs Association, have them vet it, because we learned in the process, some people have merged, so it takes 2 outfits in one. So we have a couple steps yet, but preliminary, that's what it's showing on the 65 out of 67.
so this is an example, again, if you remember from SR6, the first 2 initiatives, recruitment and retention, the first 2. This was some Representative Ferry, I'm not sure if you're still on the line or not, was instrumental in putting funds in the general fund to develop the Office of Recruitment, or the recruitment and retention positions and initiatives. Nate, his former bosses were involved on the Senate. I'm not sure who exactly was involved.
Blood inspector.
You know, there was, this was one of the things that happens in the state budget that, as Representative Ferry talked about, things get done, through, at the end of the year in budget, there was funding put in the budget for the Office of State Fire Commissioner to stand up some of those initiatives. And obviously those are huge initiatives that ultimately, this, if you remember the concept of technical advisors to go into the counties, the local governments, the fire companies to help do things. And I know Greg Jakubowski had a hand in recommending those too. So I'm gonna kick it to Tom, and then we're gonna go through each association. Dustin, Tom, Jim Carstetter, and Bob Brooks. We'll go through each. What would you like to see? What's your initiatives? If you have individual legislative initiatives? What are the things you'd like to see? Where do we need to go? And stuff like that. We'll go with Tom first.
Hey, Jerry, real quick, it's Frank Ferry. Sorry, I'm jumping in from remote here. Yeah, it was, I think 3 budgets ago, we actually budgeted for 2 technical advisors and a recruitment retention coordinator to help what the commissioner is talking about in terms of staffing up his office. I know he's in the process of trying to hire those people. He commented on that earlier, but that has been reoccurring in the budget since then. And for the members that haven't legislated during a budget, or the folks that are here today, that was basically just slid into one of the budget bills. It wasn't a freestanding piece of legislation. So, we can talk about what that needs to look like. The commissioner and I talked a few weeks ago about the outlook of his office. And, we can try and help in that way next year to maybe get some additional funding and reshape what the office looks like to meet the needs.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Get the Tom Cook.
Okay, we'll start out with the positive and then start talking about like future initiatives. So I'm happy to report that the training and testing system is 100% operational at this point. So everybody is back to business as usual after our interim period under the COVID restrictions. And what that looks like for us, and the best numbers I have are our summary as of the end of fiscal year 2021, which ended June 30th. Of 2021. We just got the data from the system and we're compiling the report for 2022. So I don't have those numbers yet. But for the fiscal year 2021, under the pandemic conditions, we did 4,699 classes with 78,676 student registrations and 1.2 million student hours in the state training system. So, and those were under the pandemic restrictions. So we're expecting those numbers to go up significantly now that we're back to fully open. So what that drives to is some of the initiatives where we're coming looking for funding, like was mentioned under the EMS section for EMS training. Fire training needs funding just as much, if not more. And obviously I'm the fire guy, so I'm going to argue for more fire funding. Sorry, Aaron. Sorry. The biggest thing, the big 3 that we're working on are increasing access to the training and testing system. So to do that, we have been in an aggressive push to bring appropriate educational training agencies and test sites online. In the last 12 months, we've added 2 ETAs and 1 test site. We've closed a big hole in our test site delivery model by bringing Erie County online. So we've now got the northwest part of the state. The other thing we're doing is we will be taking delivery. The The bid process was completed, which took almost 8 months, and we placed an order for a mobile live fire training unit. 50-foot tractor trailer, which we can now take into the areas of the state that have a significant drive to a fire training site and provide training in the backyard. All right, so that's based on building access to the system. Other than that, we're in the middle of the system configuration part of the project for the Acadis computer software. The goals of that are to combine 7 independent databases of information that contribute to not knowing how many firefighters we have in Commonwealth. And they don't talk to each other. So we're combining them into one computer system. And then that computer system will serve as the infrastructure for a statewide firefighter registry if we ever get the legislation enabling us to require that. Along with that, that system has a learning management platform, which will work in conjunction with Train PA that will allow us to deliver virtual training. And it is already approved by our accrediting agencies for Pro Board and IFSAC online certification testing. So we're moving a huge step forward with that. Projected rollout for that project is February of 23. And lastly, the other big change to build access, the educational training agencies are now, there's a policy and procedure in place. They are approved to develop and offer virtual delivery, and we will consider it equivalent to classroom delivery of our training programs.
Excellent. Any have any questions for Tom?
So you say you purchased or took delivery of that trailer?
It's purchased. It'll be delivered June of 23.
Okay.
It's just like a fire truck cheap. It takes a year to get it.
Oh, I'm surprised. It didn't take that long. July of 23.
Yeah, July of 23. We'll have it. And then
Oh,
it'll
July
take,
24.
yeah, July of 24 will be operational, right?
Okay. Does anybody on Zoom have any questions for Tracy or the Commissioner, Tracy or Tom Cook? Okay, we're good to go. So I'm going to go with, we're going to start with associations. I'll start on my left and go around. Dustin, Chief Ulrich, you want to start with career chiefs?
Sure. So I just kind of want to make a broad statement that our association covers full-time career departments, fully career, as well as combination and administrators of volunteer departments. So we get a realm of members within our association. So one of the big things that we continuously talk about in our meetings is the one voice concept. We always hear about career or volunteer. You know, we really think that a lot of things would get pushed a little bit higher up if it was just the term firefighter. It would cover a lot of things in that language and legislation that really could affect both ways, especially for combination departments. Sometimes they're excluded with some things. So with that being said, mental health, of course, for all of our responders on the fire side, that's a big priority of ours, as well as to make sure that they got the right treatment. Yeah, it's just not about coming back to the station and having a debrief. It's well after the fact, and to make sure that they get the right treatment and that they're covered. I mean, they shouldn't have to fight for any assistance whenever it comes to their job. So 10-year smoke alarm mandates. We know that was in the rental properties and it got shot down. So that was certainly one of our things. And recruitment and retention. We talked about recruitment and retention just a little bit ago. It's an issue as a whole. We really look at the volunteer side of things, but even from the career standpoint, our career departments, combination departments are really struggling to get those members and those applications even for the initial. A lot of times, 10, 15 years ago and before that, a lot of our career members would come from volunteer departments, apply. It was kind of hard to get a job at that time because there was the need was being fulfilled. The applications now are for a lot of these departments are 50% or more, 50 to 60% less than what they were even a few years ago. So that, it's definitely a struggle. It's on our hit list, our high priority right now as well. If we can't fulfill some of these jobs and positions, it's just going to be a ripple effect across the board. Relief association reform and fireworks is definitely on the table too. So we're keeping an eye on everything that goes with that. We know that there's some amendments that have been made, and we appreciate that. Other than that, that's pretty much our priorities right now that we're working on.
Sounds good. I'm going to, I want to make sure that we don't lose that concept. There was the bill for workers' comp, making PTSI part of workers' comp. I am not sure where that is in the process right now. If anybody knows that.
Committee,
Go ahead, Don.
it's in the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, is it? The Senator moves bill.
I believe that was Bartolotta's bill, Senate Bill 775. Is that what we're talking about?
Part of it.
All right, very good. Actually, I did, we'll go to Jim Carstetter next. We'll go to Steve Bear for the Institute, and then we'll go to Bob Brooks. So Jim, do you have anything from your law and legislative committee?
Well, excuse me, there's a number of things that we're kind of looking at as we're thinking about agendas moving forward. Some of those things have been talked about already, like training from the standpoint of costs, instructors, the number of instructors, and quality control on some of the programs that are out there. I know Tom has been doing a lot of work in that regard, testing and certification as well. Some of the other issues that we've been wanting to get more involved in, and the timing never seems to be right. Maybe when the fire board gets seated, they can address some of these issues. But we've talked an awful lot about the number of firefighters. We'd kind of like to see a definition of what actually constitutes a firefighter in Pennsylvania. And I don't think we have a definition that's well accepted within the state. And yet we can continue to see, especially in some of the more rural volunteer areas where you get a structure call and a piece of apparatus shows up with 2 people on it, neither of them interior firefighter certified. Some of the other things we're looking at would be community risk assessment and standard of coverage. We had talked about standard of coverages in SR6, and we haven't seen a whole lot of discussion about that yet because there's been other priorities that have been out there, but that's something that we think needs addressing and some more work on it as part of the education process with our elected municipal officials. It's hard to get them to address resources if they don't understand what their risks are to begin with. When we get into codes, of course, that brings up the old issue of sprinklers and building code reform in Pennsylvania, and some of the delays and issues that we've had in that area need to be looked at. Again, fireworks we've already discussed in the enabling legislation for the funding mechanisms. So there's a number of things that we're going to be looking at, not the least of which you touched on in the first section under EMS, dealing with the turnover and the education process. It seems that we're setting a relatively low bar in terms of expectations for at least the beginning of the next session. So I'm thinking that collectively with all of the statewide organizations, we might want to come up with a rather limited list of priorities for the next session that we can all agree are going to be top issues to be addressed if we think we're going to have a rather difficult time making a lot of progress until we get the new members up to speed, depending on how the committees are structured. Our committee will continue to be meeting. We're trying to do as much as we can to push information out to the field. I get a big kick out of some of the emails I get back in response to the articles that I put in the Pennsylvania Fireman each month. And I can say after having done that for a couple of years, I really don't need to have my heritage discussed anymore. I've got that down pretty well.
Well, thank you, Jim. Always something interesting from Erie County, and hopefully the snow's not coming next week, correct?
No, I'm sending that down to you and making plans to get out of town.
All right, I'll see you on that next cruise then. Sounds good. Thank you for all your work on that. And when you were speaking about one thing that I thought of when you jarred my memory, when you talked about the concept of the standard of cover, and Commissioner McGarvey mentioned that, again, that would work with our municipal partners, the municipal associations, maybe a work group out of this to start talking about that concept. That has been, it was in SR6, that was in SR60, that was in SR6. That concept of what does that look like, and maybe that would be a path forward with that. Go to Steve Bear and then Bob Brooks.
Well, I think I tip my
Hey,
hat-
Jerry,
Go ahead.
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to just make a point right after Jim's point about residential sprinklers. I did put it in the chat, but there was a home sprinkler saved this week in Warrington Township, Bucks County, during the weekday. Although they have one paid crew on duty, the second due companies were a little slow getting there. They arrived with, I believe, a burn victim in the front yard. I don't know any more details, but home sprinklers continue to work in Pennsylvania. And as we've talked before, we believe there's about 15 to 20,000 homes in Pennsylvania that are protected by residential sprinklers. So that's all. Sorry, Bob.
No, that's good. Chaz
So-
raise his hand.
So Greg, I agree, and sprinklers do need to come to the limelight someday. I was just at a conference. And we've heard how, when a lot of us started, we had 20 minutes to get out of a burning house, and then went down to 4 minutes. It's less than 2 minutes today to get out of a burning structure alive. The way things are burning and how hot they are burning. Sprinklers work, and somehow we need to get it at least to the local level for them to be able to decide, if they want to implement it or not. And, we talk about our volunteer firefighter crisis. It's a volunteer on duty 365 days a year, 24 hours a day.
Yeah, and Tom, I think I heard your comment. I'm sure this has been said about me as well. I don't sell or have any financial interest in sprinklers, other than I put them in industrial facilities and I have them in my home. So anybody who thinks that I'm selling or designing or doing anything with sprinklers, other than seeing people's lives saved, I don't.
Thank you, Greg. Absolutely, no problem for coming in. So Steve, you're up next.
Well, before I make the comments, I just would invite everyone, when you look at data relative to sprinklers and you look at fire losses, particularly with loss of life, be sure to look at the data in two sets, pre-1980 and post-1980. And the reason I point that out is when I made that split the last time, prior to 1980, the loss of life was typically the very young and the very old, people who either could not appropriately respond to the problem or, were incapacitated in some way. If you look at the modern age, particularly post 1990, it's about a third. So you wonder how do middle-aged people not be able to get out of a burning house? And Chaz hit the nail on the head. You've got, with carbon monoxide generation and hydrogen cyanide generation, you got about 2 minutes. And the data is definitely bearing that out. So just keep that in mind, because a lot of people throw around residential deaths, but they're looking at everything's post, since World War II, and that's not how data works. So anyway,
That's real quick with that, Steve. Pennsylvania has led the nation the last 3 years.
Yeah.
In firefighter deaths. And in the top 5 the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And we are number 1 as of today. Again, we've got to do something to get that.
Yeah, good point, Commissioner. I appreciate that. All right, so I would like to thank my partners, Jim and Dustin, for basically bringing up all the things that are on the PFESI list. So we're in lockstep with the groups as far as what's important. I think if I got down to I think if I looked at it from, kind of a couple of key priorities, I would say that the two that jump out at me are relief reform. And the reason I look at relief reform is I think the entire system has been, obviously set up to nurture a primarily volunteer force and a state that relies primarily solely on volunteers. Those days are over. The next decades will be combination departments, whether you like it or not. And we can talk all day about why that's true. But if we can modify relief to better support combination departments, a lot of these other things will take care of themselves. Along those lines, I think that, the standard cover came up again. Commissioner McGarvey noted, some kind of registry licensure, the start of some kind of minimum standards. I think minimum standards are critically important. And I know Sean and I, in this room, actually, we were talking about certification and training, how much distaste there is out there, despite the fact that in Pennsylvania, there is no minimum training standard for a firefighter at all. And yet people complain. And when you look at that I spent a lot of time since that discussion asking people questions about, where does this come from? And here's what I've learned. It still runs, by the way, but it just doesn't come up very often. We had a class that was called Legal Aspects of the Fire Service. It still exists, by the way. It's still on the list. It's usually taught by somebody who has a legal background, ideally. And as anyone with a legal, and I'm not a lawyer, by the way, just for the record. I didn't even stay at a Holiday Inn last night, okay? So I got, this is just a fire guy talking, all right? So the issue that I've come to realize is what a fire chief or an officer is learning in that course, and any course like it, and any discussion with a lawyer is, if you send people out into the world untrained, it's your butt. Ultimately, you're responsible for this. And as you know, the bar in Pennsylvania is gross negligence. That's a very, very high bar, but that's not what the discussion is. The discussion is negligence. You're negligent, okay? So what do? People now say, well, I can't afford to be the fire chief held responsible for, Susie's, debilitating injury here. So I'm going to force everybody to go be certified. And we are shoving people through the certification system that have no business being in it. And what happens? They fail. It's a certification test. Okay? There's a bar. And when they don't meet the bar, they fail. And then everybody's, irritated and, just generally peeved with training. I've come to believe that the root cause of that problem is the fact that we don't have a minimum standard. If we had a minimum standard to say, and I'll use Fire 1 as the example. Let's take Firefighter 1 example, because there's 4 modules in Firefighter 1, right? You take the first 2 modules, comes up to, I don't know, what's it come up to? 42 hours or something, like that, roughly, okay? And you say, look, that's the minimum standard of training in Pennsylvania. The minute I put somebody through a basic fire ground safety course, how can I possibly be held grossly negligent? You see where I'm going with this? My training burden has changed dramatically. And so while that seems like it's counterintuitive and it seems like it's distasteful to mandate somebody has to have minimum training, right? Oh, you'll scare volunteers away. I would argue the reality will occur. The opposite will occur, because the reality is what's driving a system that has 0 training requirements at all is the specter of getting in trouble. When you do something that defines the limits of being in trouble, I think we can go a long way with some of this. All of these things, whether it's relief reform, standard of cover, minimum training, they all have these huge ripple effects. And everybody kind of talks about the money. Sometimes we talk about the time, but we never really appreciate the ripple effects. And when you think about it, the collateral damage that we're doing to people, I'd argue is as big or sometimes even bigger than some of the financial things that we're talking about here. So to recap, I think the 2 things that are foremost in my mind, and I'm not we have not fleshed these two things out as the two things with our board, but generally in the discussions that with the folks that are on our board, relief reform is a biggie, and some kind of minimum standards and standard cover target. I don't understand how we decide how to allocate funds and personnel and set priorities when you don't even know what you're trying to achieve. I think focus groups are a great idea, by the way. I tip my hat to anybody who works with focus groups, you get a lot done that way, so. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Appreciate the opportunity so far.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Bob Brooks, you're up next. Either you or
Kevin doesn't like to talk unless I make him. Nah, he's very good. I thank you for the opportunity, guys. And I'm glad to follow the last speaker here, because I can't say that I agree any less with the standardized training. I think it's something that we seriously have to have a conversation about. I also want to make note, we're talking about sprinklers, and I'm all for sprinklers. I just want to make sure that we keep them as a tool and not a replacement for our firefighters. I can tell you, I'll go back to my Bethlehem here. In Bethlehem, I had a fire chief stand in front of city council and told me he had a firefighter every 15 feet in the ceiling. And that's not true. They're a great tool that we need to use. We can't replace people with them. They're not fail safe. But thank you for the opportunity to speak on those. Our big thing here, Act 111 defense, we're constantly, protecting our right to bargain and to negotiate. That's a huge thing, because there's always an attack from one side or the other, sometimes both, depending on what the agenda is on their end. So we're constantly fighting that. And on the PTSI, which I heard the fire chief speaking about earlier, and it's been mentioned many times here today, whether we're talking about EMS or we're talking about fire. And right now, I can tell you that it's Senate Bill 775. It's a second consideration in front of the full Senate, and that was brought forth by Senator Bartolotta. There's also a companion bill in the House. That's House Bill 1772 that was brought forth by Representative Ryan. We're in good shape, but we find people fighting against us, and most of the time it's the insurance industry, the underwriters is what we see, unfortunately. They're protecting their interests, but hopefully we can figure out a way to get that thing across the finish line and help all of us out all across the thing. I'll touch a little bit on retention, and it's just my opinion. A problem in the paid world. I don't know how this reflects into the volunteer world. I do have some ties there, but in the paid world, what I see from my end as a union representative is they cut the benefits, and that hurt. A few years ago, I can tell you my benefit is at 20 years, I can retire 60%, right? And at 25 years, I can retire 70% of my pension. And I think it was 2012, the date I'd have to find that out, but they cut those benefits, and anybody getting hired started getting 50% of their base instead of 60 and 70% of everything I made. And that's just the beginning. They've cut, it's a tiered system we have in this world. And it really hurts when we're talking about getting people to take the job. And to be quite honest with you, most of the people that sign up to take our job are volunteers. So that takes it away from the volunteer world, right? So when those guys start taking the jobs, now they don't have time to do the volunteer. They're concentrating on their job and their livelihood. And so them cutting the benefits of the paid departments and having these tiered systems when it comes to your defined benefit, your retirement, your healthcare plans, and everything like that. It's I'll go back to another word somebody else has used, the ripple effect, right? It ripples on right out into the other world, the volunteer world. So those are little things. We will concentrate again from our end on the PTSI. That's our major thing, and we'll be defending our Act 111 till we go away. I thank you for your time, and I hope everybody stays well.
Thank you very much, Bob Brooks. Chad Deerdorf, your county chief.
Jerry, can I add something to what Bob said?
Sure, absolutely, Greg, go
Right,
ahead.
so besides the fact of the, the career firefighters, issues that Bob said, a lot of departments are hiring part-time, they're hiring stipend people, all that sort of thing. And, Bob's point is spot on with, they're just getting, I was talking to a fire chief at Delaware earlier this week, and I said to him, I said, you're paying guys to work part-time at your place that are coming from the neighboring fire station while they're paying your guys to work part-time at your station. So again, we're just robbing from a basic pool of the same number of people from one to the other. The other thing that the stipend and all the part-time things issues or hiring effects, and again to Bob's point, is these guys aren't getting any benefits. They're not getting, it's not a career thing. It's kind of just like I'm filling in the gap. And we've seen what's happened on the police side, where they're using part-time people all over the place, and they're having a hard time getting people, or when they're getting them, they're not getting quality people, that are carrying guns and so on and so forth out there. So I'm a proponent of, if at some point, I know we're just kind of trying to save a buck and kick the can down the road, but the issue is that we want to get people, we want them to have good careers, and we want them to stick, and they deserve to get everything that's coming to them for doing the job. So.
Thank you, Greg. Good, Steve.
Just along those lines, that's a really good point. And I talk about combo departments, and I mentioned collateral damage. One of the collateral damage issues with relief as it exists is you have a lot of departments that hire non-firefighter positions. Okay, I'm describing a place for firsthand knowledge, folks, right? I'm describing a place that's a 2-bay fire station with a single bathroom and has 6 janitors at any given time. That is an FLSA problem waiting to come home to roost. And sooner or later, this house of cards is going to come crashing down on people. So, again, it's not just the money, it's this collateral damage. It's the risk to municipalities, the risk to these fire departments, the risk to the individuals who are working themselves to death on multiple part-time jobs, and then ultimately the hemorrhage that we have of people leaving our fire and EMS systems. And we're kidding ourselves.
Yes, they're janitors until the pager goes off, then they're volunteers, and who's covered under the workers' comp, then they're back at the station, and then they're
And I'm gonna
janitors.
tell you right now, my fire department's guilty. We're a little cleaner because we're 2 separate entities on doing the hiring thing, but but fundamentally, a pig's a pig. Okay, so.
You described EMS to a T there, by the way, on working this job, but that's a whole other conversation. To elaborate a little on what Steve said earlier with the minimum standard, we see, particularly in York County, and I'm sure it's the same, Tom has probably gotten numerous phone calls from upset fire chiefs and or parents, because I've had parents come and literally stand there and swear at us and call us names, to the point where the 4 instructors didn't even know which one they were talking about, because we all could have fit that statute of what she was calling us. But until fire chiefs stop relying on the instructors, and this is my opinion, not the opinion of the State Fire Academy, does that constitute, Ari?
You're off the hook.
Okay.
Maybe not tomorrow.
This is my opinion. Until fire chiefs start standing up and saying, look, we're not sending them to the instructors to weed them out for us. Get the gumption in the stomach to say, you know what, you're not designed for interior firefighting. We have other jobs for you, but you are not designed to be going to an interior firefighting class. It's not only a hazard for them, it's a hazard for the instructors, it's a hazard for the other students. So that's my soapbox, as Steve said on that. And Dustin probably has the same out in Franklin as we have in York with that same situation. And the other thing, just actually good news from York County's spot, we are very supported by our commissioners Without them, the fire school would not operate financially. But without even actually asking them officially, the president commissioner came to the last month meeting and announced that they were approving the tax break for any firefighter within the county for the county taxes if the municipality would do the same. So they're forcing the municipalities to come out and say no when we just went through this in West Manchester Township. I just spoke last week at a meeting there at the supervisors meeting, and they're approving it for the township, which means then the county is going to approve it for the personnel within the township for the county side of things. What it looks like, we don't know yet. But I thought that was rather, that to me goes, our working relationship meant something to them. And they saw I mean, quite honestly, for West Manchester Township, it's like $10,000 or $15,000. I pointed them to the fact that we can hire a fully career department. It's going to cost you X amount of dollars. And you can't argue with the numbers because I pulled them from the 3 local unions, the 3 local departments, and averaged out the numbers. So it was nice to have them come in and actually, without us going to them, and that meant a lot to the people within the county.
You're exactly right, because that'll be county number 2. County number 1 was Cumberland County. And that was direct result of Act 91, if you guys remember, that allowed counties to do the tax. Cumberland has done it. We just had a press conference a couple of weeks ago. As part of this county, the township commissioner had a role into that. And we've had several school districts across Pennsylvania do it also. And Jerry Brandt is actually going to talk next, and maybe we can talk about the school district. But there is, I was a vendor for the PSATS conference in April. And there's a bunch of township supervisors that come up and talk, and we talk, and up in the Poconos, there's a township in the Poconos that exempts all of their volunteers, all 100% of their taxes, which was, I didn't know that they did that. That was very good.
Is there a place that you're going to put like a repository we could get that information?
So that would be a nice goal between Tracy, the commissioner, what we're doing, because that is one of those data deficits. There's also one of the ones that,
On that real quick, so the way the law states, the township and they're supposed to report to the Office of State Fire what they're doing. Unfortunately, the mechanisms have not been put in place, and that's our fault. And Tracy and I are working on that right now. We're getting a computerized program done up, and we're going to get the letters out there. So we'll have all that information once we get this done.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking at criteria, that was one thing they were tasked with, was coming back with the criteria for West Manchester. So
we did ours as simple as possible. An active firefighter is deemed possible by the fire chief. The municipalities didn't want to get involved in those details. Thank you. Jerry Brandt, you're up next.
Thanks, Jerry. I guess I need to mention something about our tax credit situation. I'm on Cambria Heights School Board. We were the first school board in the state of Pennsylvania to offer a tax credit to our fire personnel in the companies that cover our school district. And very simply, it's a $200 a year credit. And we based it on 5 different types of criteria. Certainly answering calls would be one of them. Training would be one of them. But we also took into consideration people that spend time doing administrative duties so that we're not missing any certain section of the firefighters that belong to these departments. When we looked at it, because the first thing that you'll hear from a lot of municipal officials is, oh my God, that's going to take money out of our budget. We figured it out, and we have about a $20 million budget. And what we saw was that it cost us about $20,000, which was a drop in the bucket for what it was able to do. And so if anybody wants any information on that, I can get you the resolution. I can get you the name of the solicitor that did it. He's happy to talk to you. I can get you all the information that we utilized Jerry has my contact information. I'm sure he'd be happy to share it with you. A couple of other items that I brought up to Jerry was, number one, the idea that, we have situations in Pennsylvania where we have distressed communities. And when distressed communities get into that situation, they can declare themselves Act 47, and there's help coming from the Department of Community and Economic Development to provide them with assistance to try to get them out of the hole that they've gotten themselves into. If you're a school district in the state of Pennsylvania, the same thing applies. The Department of Education will come in and provide you with assistance to take care of getting yourself back on track as far as being a viable educational institute. What my idea was to form a team, and I don't know, some of you may be familiar with what's called SCORE, the Senior Corps of Retired Executives. It's through the Small Business Administration, and basically it offers stipends and traveling expenses to retired executives to help them with small businesses that might need their help. My thought was, if we could put together some of these teams here in Pennsylvania, go over to the Department of Aging, because I know everybody always says, gee, where's the money going to come from? And see if they have any money laying around in all those lottery funds, and see if we couldn't put together several of these teams across Pennsylvania that departments could get in touch with, because right now departments don't have anybody to talk to, and or they might go talk to the chief next door who's in worse situation than they are. I called it Team Florian, and certainly you can give it whatever title you wanted to, but I think it's maybe something that we ought to look at for consideration. The second idea was the fact of some type of a rural caucus, a rural focus group, rural breakout, whatever you want to call it. In rural areas, yes, we suffer from some different needs from other parts of the state. Tom and I worked on the mobile burn trailer. I think it was 2 years ago, or maybe 3 now. Time goes by quickly. And at that time, the data showed us that there were 30 counties that have no access to local level training site. There are other issues, population decreasing, older population, economic disinvestment, and those have a direct correlation with recruiting and retention issues. And the other point of that is, besides the needs, is we lack a lot of the resources that a lot of the other areas of Pennsylvania have. My department covers 98.9 square miles. And yes, we have a fire tax. We cover 4 townships and all of 2 boroughs. We get $25,000 a year total in property taxes. That's with a 1.1 mil tax being levied by the municipalities. So as you see, we're dealing with a lot of the same issues: recruiting, retention, training, etc. But we also lack a lot of the resources to help to address those issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry. I love every one of those ideas, and great ideas for brainstorming. Joel Landis, are you able to speak on the Hazmat Association? Did you get my message?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Hi, sorry about all the technical difficulties, but Somerset County is lacking a whole bunch of things, including EMS and broadband internet at times. So, and that's a whole other meeting. But in reference to EMS and the lacking, we just lost another ambulance services, or is losing. They've announced that they'll be closing their doors. And as these ambulance stations continue to close, they're just absorbed by other services who are already inundated with a call load and a staffing issue. So, I brought up the question about, in the last 5 years since SR6, let's put it there. Since SR6, how many ambulance services have we lost? So that I don't want the answer. It's just I think that if we can portray some of this to legislators, maybe we can show that even though we identified so much within that product, we're still losing services like this one in Somerset County. So I'm very interested in the authority model. I heard somebody bring it up. That it's a tool. It's not going to be a tool for everybody to use, but it's a tool that we don't currently have. And I kind of wish that legislation piece was put into place before we lost this last one, because maybe that could have assisted that. But unfortunately, what's done is done, and you know, they're closing up. So that's our situation here locally in Somerset. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. AJ jumped off, Joe. I was gonna have AJ speak for the township supervisors. Joe, do you wanna, any comments, give you the floor there at all?
Sure. Thanks, Jerry. Real quick. Thanks for everybody for allowing me to be a part of it. George, my colleague. You know, it's a pretty personal thing for me. In the last 3 years, I've been saved literally twice by local EMS services and an off-duty firefighter, volunteer firefighter who I'll never know his name. So, you know, I understand there's a lot of complications here in my 27 years in state, federal, and now local government. There's a lot of the questions that I've heard before. Thank you all for your dedication in keeping moving the ball forward. You know, with I think Tracy, I know she left, brought it up. In a state that is so diverse as Pennsylvania topographically, it's difficult to come with a you know, one you know, top down, one size fits all. And you know, we're going to continue to work. I know the blessing that I have is that a lot of the members, a lot of our board members here at PSATs wear fire helmets, or answer calls on EMS. So that's one of the things that we have as a benefit as well. Appreciate being part of the conversation. I always learn something when I'm part of these groups. So with that, I'll shut up and pass it on.
Okay, Bill Genoway is up next.
Thank you, Jerry. I just wanted to comment at this point in time. As some of you are aware, each year at the annual PSATS conference for the last decade, there has been a session on fire and EMS issues in your community. And I've been the fortunate one to facilitate that each year at being a township supervisor. And we've had in each of those sessions, myself, whoever was the executive director of PFESI, meaning Jerry and his predecessors, and typically have had the state fire commissioner. Most recently this year, Chaz was there. And in the past, we even had some representatives and senators such as Frank Ferry. Each one typically is a repeat of the past year, though. And I think it's important for us to understand that despite the fact that that conference gets somewhere around 3,000 to 4,000 Pennsylvania elected officials, a significant percentage each year are new. They come in with their own perception of what local fire protection and local emergency medical services can, should, or would be. And the questions are repetitive many years. There are always two concerns. You can guess what they are. How do we continue to provide the service? And how little money do I really have to spend on this? So it's an educational process, and it's continual. And my point of this discussion is simply to remind us that we have to constantly be educating the elected officials at the lowest levels, whether it's a borough, first class, second class township, whatever you are. If we don't effectively communicate with them, they will bring their own perceptions and therefore their own reality to their own communities. And it doesn't matter what we do. Thanks, Jerry.
Got it. Greg Jakubowski.
Yeah, I gotta get off here at 3:30, but just to tag on to the last two kind of conversations, I got this information very, very recently from someone who's specking out fire apparatus, and I deal with fire equipment, buying fire equipment every day, millions of dollars a year. For this particular community, they got a pumper order in fiscal year 22 at $646,000 for a pumper. build time 285 days. Fiscal year 23, the same exact specification, $776,000. So $130,000 more, and the build time went from 285 days to 800 days. I know the same problems are in ambulances. They're waiting almost 2 years, a little less, to get an ambulance. The prices are through the roof, folks. And the ability for individual fire departments to survive, only the strong are going to survive. The weak ones financially are going to have great trouble, and they're going to have to go to the municipalities for that. And at the same time, they're going to have to continue to either buy used trucks or buy stock models, basic trucks, and not so much custom. But you know, it's outside forces are going to drive consolidation and go into the municipal model as well. But those numbers are staggering. We know that. I mean, I ordered a pumper. I was part of a committee to order a pumper 5 years before that, and we got it at like 450,000. So it went up to 200,000 in 5 years, and now it's going up $130,000 in 1 year with very, very long build times. So just interesting food for thought to think about, and these things are going to drive all kind of problems and drive companies to continue to close because they can't afford to do business.
Thank you very much. We're going to do one more open call, and I'm going to have Sean, Nate, and Chris have any final wrap-ups because I think we're all about done. Open call for any feedback. We'll again put together, I'll work with our EMS leadership. I'll work with our fire leadership. Personally, I'll call everybody just so we have some notes to put together some of our priorities. I think it was pretty much agreed upon that, you know, again, our focus for a short window for the fall is that, you know, there's 4 pieces of legislation to spend the fire works money and things like that. But we, you know, I've always said, you know, again, we have to continue to move forward, continue great feedback. Anybody have any feedback from Zoom before we close it out with the closeouts? Anybody else from Zoom?
Jerry, it's Bill Dunaway. I just want to add one other thing. And as I know, I've said at the sessions a few times before, I've handled the Firemen's Association's Safer Grant program now since its inception. And we continue to find the same pattern throughout the state. There are a significant number of departments who, as I believe it was Tracy mentioned earlier, look for help. And they try to get that help wherever they can get it from. One of the things, though, that has become very, very clear is the lack of ownership by a department to take this beyond what I'll call the interest stage and integrate it. And what we have clearly seen in this program now for 7 years is if a fire chief or somebody in that department takes it on that they are going to recruit, and we've had some career departments take advantage of this as well. If they take it by the tail, so to speak, and they run with it, they're successful. It averages about $1,500 per new recruit just to get them in the door. That's what we've been seeing. And once they get them in, it becomes the next challenge, which means they have to hand them off to somebody who has that same determination, willpower, and expertise to get that person through a mentoring system of some type and then and trained and into their system. But it's work. And I think my biggest fear in the recruitment and retention area is that individuals will not continue to have this desire to actively recruit, bring them in, mentor them, train them, and bring them to a point, which means that the reality of more and more combination systems, whether they are regionalized or through an authority or whatever, is clearly the path that we're going. And we have to understand it, and we have to figure out how to support that next step, as well as continue to support those rural departments and some suburbans that want to continue volunteerism.
Great. Thank you. Representative Ferry, do you want to say something too? Say pop on.
Yeah, just a couple things to follow up. I know Brooks mentioned about the smoke detector legislation. it's on the verge of passing the House. Unfortunately, some members of my caucus, I'm going to say this all due respectfully, are focused on freedoms, and they don't think we should be telling people what they have to do even in terms of public safety. So hopefully, I'm going to try and get another bite at that where we can at least get it out of the House and have some momentum, to start a new next session. So that's one. The PTSI language. The chairman of the Labor Committee in the House, who hates that language, he hated it when Chairman Barrar had it, is retiring. So there will be a new Labor Committee chair. So we may have an opportunity starting next session. I don't know if Cameron's staying as Labor Committee chair in the Senate, but it's obviously her bill. So, if we can hopefully get a different Labor Committee chair in the House that may be a little more friendly to it. But I thought this was a great discussion. It does feel like Groundhog Day because a lot of times we're talking about the same things, which just really highlights how much more work there is for us to do. Speaking to my specific municipality, if you go on Middletown Bucks, I think it's .org, but since there's several Middletowns in Pennsylvania, make sure it's the one that's Bucks. A consulting company was brought in here, and Jerry read the study, and they did a study of the fire service here. We have 4 fire departments, 6 stations protecting a township of 47,000 people and the 4 boroughs it surrounds. And trust and communication was the top issue. Our local officials, not just the current ones, but the ones over the last several sessions as they've turned over, have done a terrible job with us. Quite frankly, I would argue it may be among the worst in the state, which is kind of embarrassing because where I'm the fire chief. But we've tried to be successful with them, and we're just continuing to struggle. And I'm worn out from it, quite frankly. I'm tired of being chief. I'm tired of doing this. I have 2 little kids at home. I'm still doing it for my community and for my fellow firefighters, but it is brutal with what we're going through here. And the latest thing they hit us with was we passed a referendum to increase the tax above 3 mils. And that was passed 20 years ago. I never needed to go above 3 mils. And now we actually do because of apparatus, which Greg was touching on, apparatus replacement costs. And literally they just told us the resolution's null and void and they want to go back out to the voters. And, that puts us in a tough position because 1, it requires a lot of work from an already strained and smaller group of firefighters. But 2, with inflation and everything else going on now, it's a little tough to ask, our people to go out to the ballot box and vote in favor of increasing their taxes. So we basically said, forget the tax increase. We'll just continue to be underfunded. But, I appreciate all the efforts, both in fire and EMS, everybody's putting forward. And I look forward to hopefully having a successful election. Hopefully we can get the fireworks enabling language done for those various programs. And then hopefully we can start anew with some great advocacy come January. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean, Nate, Chris, anything from your end?
I'm just going to put forward what I stated earlier.
Okay. Nate?
Yeah, again, some good things have happened here. Appreciate a lot of the work that was done since our last FR6 discussion. Was it back in December, Jerry?
It was December. Our last one was December 6th of 2021.
So thanks for continuing these discussions. SR6, well, some people said it's a report on the shelf. Not much progress on it. There's been a lot of work that's going on and continuing to get done. We talked earlier about the fire relief stabilization. That was a long time coming, and it's now finished. That's across the finish line. The fireworks reform we've talked about, and the pieces that need to get done. Even another piece, Senator Laughlin's Senate Bill 563 is now Act 42, fire safety requirements in family child care homes got done. Coming up, we'll continue to work on the fireworks implementation. We've got a bill, Senator Stefano's got Senate Bill 1027, the junior firefighters piece. The House passed their bill, Senate passed their bill. Now we got to work on getting one of those 2 across the goal line. Appreciate the discussion discussions that are taking place. And Fire Commissioner's Office on that front. Tracy talked about Fire Course Registry. We're looking to continue to push that forward. And another discussion that we really haven't talked about here today, but really criminal history background checks. We're getting a number of calls in our offices here about firefighters and some of their backgrounds on that front. Maybe we need to establish some basics on that front, and, you know, currently up to the fire companies, you know, in those standards. So at some point, you know, that should be coming up. Couple of dates next week, my boss and I are headed out to Pittsburgh for their firefighter Ops 101. Attended that a couple years ago. That was very eye-opening, a number of things that they showed us. So we're looking forward to going out there. I talked earlier about September 19th is going to be our Fire and EMS caucus, the Zoom meeting. Again, 10 to 12. If you don't have that information, I'll send it to you. Similar to this, but again, we got to hone down our message. It's a 2-hour session. Senator Stefano will moderate it. And we, you know, again, we need to hone down our points, you know, about 2 minutes each for each entity to talk about the priorities and getting folks up to speed on that front. So stay tuned. I'll keep you posted as that develops. Another date that's out there, September 27th, Act 87 of 2021 authorized First Responder Day in Pennsylvania. And that September 27th is coming up. It's not a session day for us, but something that we ought to be looking at here in the future in terms of marking that at the Capitol or something along those lines. And we held our EMS press conference at First Responder Plaza, which not many people knew about. That was done a number of years ago, and that's, you know, this group could take ownership of First Responder Plaza over the next couple of years. You know, whether it's, you know, working with the Department of General Services on landscaping there, or even some monuments in the future. So that's something I'd like to see some conversations on. And also, Senator Stefano, we held a hearing on the next generation of firefighters out in the western part of the Commonwealth. We're looking at hopefully to do that, whether it's in the September, October timeframe in the eastern part of the Commonwealth. And we're also looking to do a hearing on fire billing. Senator Dush has introduced legislation over the years, and we might hold that up in his district. So stay tuned on a number of those things. But Jerry, thanks for continuing to push this conversation forward.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. We're going to continue to do this. We appreciate your assistance. Always looking for feedback and ways to move forward. We're going to cut it off right now. I know everybody was stayed in really good. We are going to have our happy hour at Al's of Hampton Pizza Boy Brewing, as I always love to do that. You are all welcome to attend and talk about the after party parties. So with that, I'd like to appreciate it. Thank you for coming, and we'll keep moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.